Chapter 1638. Everyone could not feel that Su Yi's aura had completely recovered. Gu Yue could not help but secretly nod his head as he thought to himself, "There's actually such a change. His cultivation has also increased. It's understandable that he was late." Middle grade 3? Did I see wrongly? The teaching elders behind him had their mouths agape, their hearts indescribably shocked. As for those who had participated in the incident earlier, their hearts were in turmoil. They all knew that Su Yi was only at the initial stage of the 3rd grade, but who would have thought that in just a few days, Su Yi would actually reach the middle stage of the 3rd grade? What kind of abnormal speed was this? The cultivation of the soul was not like the cultivation of Yuan Qi. It was much more difficult and obscure. Aside from the fact that one needed to be extremely talented to control the power of the soul, one also needed to put in 100 times more effort than normal people. Thus, Su Yi's leap from the initial stage of the 3rd grade to the middle stage of the 3rd grade caused everyone to be incomparably shocked. This Su Yi, in just a few days, had actually risen by a small stage? Wasn't he seriously injured to death? How'd he do it? Su Yi leisurely took large strides towards Duanmu Xiaoman, his gaze fixed on her. Su Yi's gaze did not waver. His heart was untainted as he said, "Palace Mistress Duanmu, I've long heard of your great name." Carefully scrutinizing Duanmu Xiaoman, his eyes were clear and bright. Under the gloomy clouds, Duanmu Xiaoman was like a pearl in the sky, bright and dazzling. There's actually such a beautiful woman in this world. So he could not help but exclaim in his heart. The huge change in his soul cultivation definitely had something to do with Palace Mistress Duanmu. But as for why she wanted to save him, Su Yi did not know. This was the reason why Su Yi wanted Duanmu Xiaoman to act so boldly. With such a cultivation, it would not be difficult for him to shine in the Heavenly Wind ranking tournament. Duanmu Xiaoman's milky white aura lingered around her body, making her look like a fairy. Her beautiful eyes were cold as frost and snow. Still expressionless, Duanmu Xiaoman looked at Su Yi indifferently. Only Gu Yu could sense that Duanmu Xiaoman's aura was faintly fluctuating. Black eyebrows and snow-white skin, the atmosphere was cold. "Tell me, what do you want if you dive to 20,000 meters below the surface?" Duanmu Xiaoman frowned, her face frosty. Su Yi's aura surged as cold origin qi spread out. Su Yi quietly circulated the primordial supreme art. The art of driving the heavens circulated to protect his body, instantly dispelling the aura. A sly smile flashed across Su Yi's lips. His bright eyes were full of confidence and elegance. It didn't seem like he was talking to the most terrifying existence of Driver Palace at all. "I want you to teach me personally. Help Heavenly Wind take first place." What? This Su Yi is too daring. It's fine if he's not from Driver Palace, but he even looks down on the Grand Elder. Shameless. He wants the Palace Lord to teach him personally. The Palace Lord has never accepted a disciple before. Is he trying to take advantage of the situation? Yeah, I really thought he was some kind of hero, but he's just someone who covets our Driver Palace. Trash. This is really torture. He actually returned from the central quaking peak. I really spit on him, and he still wants to be our Palace Lord's disciple. Wishful thinking. As soon as he said that, the crowd cursed under their breaths. Su Yi's eyes were as sharp as knives. Qi swirled around his body, and a fiery red light surged around him. He turned around to look at the disciples of the Imperial Palace, and a biting, cold, murderous intent spread out, sweeping across the high cliff. Instantly, the entire Driver Palace fell silent. Su Yi knew that when facing these people, strength was the best way to deal with them. Instead of letting them laugh at him, it was better to make them completely dumbfounded. However, the people from Lingyue Peak were filled with shock and suspicion. They knew that Su Yi definitely had some ideas, but they couldn't figure out. Han Yuro, who was standing at the side, pursed her lips tightly. She was slightly anxious, afraid that Su Yi would be harmed by the people from Driver Palace again. What is this brat planning? Interesting, but Yuro still needs to resolve the knot in her heart. Han Wulong looked at Su Yi with interest, his tiger eyes flashing. Yuro's excessive concern for Su Yi had also become a knot in his heart. On the other hand, Jun Hao-Ian's eyes were gloomy. The surging battle intent in his heart had reached its peak again, like a flame soaring into the sky. His gaze was extremely sharp as he looked at Su Yi and Duanmu Xiaoman. His fists unconsciously tightened, and his knuckles turned white, making cracking sounds. Crack! Just now, Eldegyue had made it very clear that the soul manipulation battle would only be rewarded from 10,000 meters onwards. Everyone who could reach that point would receive 3 Dongxian Heavenly Fire pills. At 15,000 meters, they would receive a mid-tier mystic instrument, the Azure Flame Yin Cauldron. This condition was already extremely harsh, and it was impossible for anyone to reach it. The participants of the Heavenly Palace Spirit Tournament this time were all experts below the age of 32. Being able to reach 10,000 meters was already their limit. If they were able to reach 15,000 meters, they would definitely be able to obtain a good result in the Heavenly Wind ranking tournament. If they could reach a few thousand meters below 15,000 meters or even 20,000 meters, they would naturally be able to receive the Grand Elder's guidance. With this talent and opportunity, it was very possible for them to break through to the mid-tier of the 5th grade and obtain the Palace Lord's position in the Driver Palace. This Su Yi, when he came up, he didn't want any of the rewards. He directly said that he wanted to reach 20,000 meters and even pointed out that Duanmu Xiaoman would personally guide him. With just one sentence, he had offended everyone and naturally attracted a lot of curses. Yue and Han Wulong, on the other hand, didn't think much of it. Both of them had a faint smile on their faces as they nodded heavily. They wanted to see how Su Yi would do it, but they also wanted to see how Duanmu Xiaoman would react. Duanmu Xiaoman's eyes revealed a trace of a smile as she said softly, "All right, I'll wait for you at 20,000 meters. If you can make out alive, I'll take you in as my disciple. It's a promise." Su Yi laughed loudly. Wow, the Palace Master actually agreed. If he becomes the Palace Master's disciple, won't he have a meteoric rise in the future? Do you think the Palace Master will take him in as a disciple so easily? Just wait for your death. That's right. How can there be such a cheap deal in the world? 20,000 meters. I bet he's not qualified at all. Let's not talk about whether Su Yi has the ability or not. Isn't there still Jun Hao-Ian? Do you think he'll let Su Yi sink to 20,000 meters so easily? From exclamations to ridicule, all the disciples and elders of Juntian Palace understood that the Palace Master wouldn't easily agree to Su Yi's request. There was going to be a good show to watch. Everyone, get ready. In 15 minutes, we'll all enter the Broken Sword Sea. Duanmu Xiaoman's soft and pleasant voice quietly spread throughout the entire place. Her aura was like the sound of an immortal from the heavens. In an instant, the violent winds and huge waves at the edge of the Broken Sword Sea stopped. Yes, Palace Master, all participating teams, get your elders to lead your teams. Choose your teams and get ready to enter the sea. Gu Yue frowned and confirmed with everyone once again. Calm. Wonderful book house. Chapter 1639. As soon as he finished speaking, Duanmu Xiaoman raised her eyes slightly and unconsciously took a deep look at Su Yi, who was filled with divine light. Then, a blue wave flashed in her eyes, and she no longer looked at him. She then moved to the edge of the Broken Sword Cliff. Roar! The Broken Sword Ocean, which had been sleeping for 10,000 years, had a fishy wind whistling, like a furious beast crawling on the surface of the sea. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled, as if an extremely terrifying storm would descend at any time. Lightning and thunder pillars were entwined in the dark clouds like pythons, hissing and shaking people's souls. Above the void, the surroundings were filled with a dangerous aura. Duanmu Xiaoman's beautiful hair fluttered in the wind, her face solemn, and a few elders followed closely behind her, very respectful. In an instant, Duanmu Xiaoman's moon eyes changed, and a delicate shout from her mouth pierced through the clouds. At this moment, an overwhelming pressure burst out from Duanmu Xiaoman's body, shattering the space around her body. Then, Duanmu Xiaoman gently stretched out her arms and raised her hands. Her robes fluttered, and a long white ribbon shot out from her snow-white wrist, like an arrow shot from a bow into the low sky. The ribbon immediately bloomed with an extremely bright light, overturning the sea above the sea, and then spread out, turning into an extremely huge light screen. As the light screen spread out, Duanmu Xiaoman's surging soul pressure covered the entire Broken Sword Ocean, and the inexplicably fierce hurricane stopped for a moment. The light condensed, and the light screen covered the sky. The elders behind her could feel the change in the aura around Duanmu Xiaoman's body, and all of them were amazed and surprised. At the highest point of the light screen, there were dense light spots that were extremely clear. This was actually an extremely huge map of the soul race. As Duanmu Xiaoman's strength and pressure pierced through the heavens and the earth, the golden light illuminated the sky, and everyone could clearly feel the position of each person on the light screen. Palace Lord's current cultivation can be said to be unprecedented. To be able to cover a vast sea like the Broken Sword Ocean with her pressure, this soul pressure is truly terrifying to the extreme. Guyue couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Duanmu Xiaoman was a legend since birth, and even after so many years, she had never fallen below the peak. Palace Lord Duanmu is no longer on the same level as us. What kind of existence is this world in her eyes? Even Han Wulong, who had always prided himself on being a genius, couldn't help but feel his heart tighten. He was in his 40s and had already surpassed most cultivators by half a lifetime. Even with such a godly speed, in front of Duanmu Xiaoman, Han Wulong still felt inferior. In the limitless sect, Han Wulong, who was invincible among his peers, had always had a dark shadow in his heart all these years. Back then, in order to ascend to the position of limitless sect master, Han Wulong had fought his way through the entire Cloud region. However, he was defeated by Duanmu Xiaoman in an instant twice. This kind of humiliation still shrouded Han Wulong's heart, and it had not dissipated for a long time. It was only today that Han Wulong knew that this was a peak that he could never cross. This woman was too strong, terrifyingly strong. Just this soul pressure alone was enough for Han Wulong to know that no one in the entire Cloud Prefecture could compare to her. Han Wulong's heart surged, and his eyes shone brightly. Influenced by Duanmu Xiaoman, the golden dragon aura around him also surged out. A surge of battle intent soared to the heavens, like a golden dragon war god. His black hair fluttered in the wind, and his fiery intent filled the sky. Strength. This is the strength of the Palace Lord of the Imperial Palace. Su Yi, who was instantly locked down, couldn't help but feel waves in his heart. Duanmu Xiaoman's pressure was coming straight for him. Without a doubt, Duanmu Xiaoman was an existence that surpassed all living beings. In Su Yi's knowledge, other than the saint sage that he had never met, Duanmu Xiaoman represented the strongest among the humans. She represented the supreme power. She was stronger than his master Suruga, stronger than the Grand Elder of Shunjian Gate, stronger than Shenghua, and stronger than Chunyu. This was the reason why the Imperial Palace stood above the 6 continents, 3 continents, and 1 ocean for 10,000 years. Ever since he mastered the Origin Supreme technique, Su Yi's Tian Yuan Demon Soul's ability to resist pressure had always been at its peak. Now, an unprecedented pressure made Su Yi's heart palpitate, as if he was submitting. Duanmu Xiaoman's cold and beautiful face pressed heavily on his heart, making Su Yi unconsciously want to lower his arrogant head. This kind of superior looking down on Su Yi caused the anger in his heart to spread endlessly. The anger that erupted from the depths of his teeth was like a raging dragon soaring into the sky. Su Yi's strange behavior surprised Elder Guyue. Su Yi, who was rooted to the ground, seemed to have a twitch on his face. Just as he was about to step forward, Guyue immediately understood that this was Palace Lord Duanmu's intention. Palace Lord Duanmu's short attack and the current pressure are all to suppress Su-yi. Or perhaps it's called tempering. Guyue immediately stopped and looked at Su-yi. Even if Palace Lord Duanmu agreed with his words, he was still testing him again and again. If he couldn't even do this, then there was no need to mention the broken sword ocean that was filled with danger. The spiritual pressure was several times stronger than the surface. How could he successfully return from 20,000 meters away? Phew! Su-yi's expression turned serious as his heart was filled with fighting spirit. Even though he was strong, Su-yi, who had lived 2 lives, knew that he would not bow his head to anyone in this martial world where the strong preyed on the weak. In fact, even before anything had started, Su-yi would absolutely not admit defeat. The word defeat would never exist in Su-yi's mind, much less the only woman who had slapped him twice. Su-yi would never bow his head to her. The greater the pressure, the greater the resistance in Su-yi's heart. Not only did he want to win this time, he wanted Duanmu Xiaoman to bow her head to him in the future. Boom! Su-yi roared inwardly. Rise! Move for me! Suddenly, the primordial chaos supreme technique in Su-yi's body surged like a tidal wave. The heaven-controlling art and the heaven-fate ancient sutra circulated at full strength as he roared inwardly. You want me to admit defeat here? Impossible. Pung. The immense power shook one's soul, and the aura was also terrifying. The chi of vitality in the great void divine, circulated endlessly in the wide meridians. The chi of vitality that spread out in all directions, along with the pressure, stirred up the ripples in the surrounding space. Circle after circle of ripples pushed towards the horizon. Su-yi could feel that after he woke up, the perfection of his meridians had reached a new level. Immediately, he heard a collision in his soul. Su-yi's eyes flashed as his aura relaxed, and the lock was removed. After taking the first step, the next few steps became smoother and smoother. Su-yi's lips curled into a smile. His aura lingered in the air as he quickly walked toward Elder Guyue, as if nothing had happened. Duanmu Xiaoman, who was by the cliff, was still looking at the scattered clouds in the sky. However, she could constantly sense the changes in Su-yi's pressure behind her. She probed with her mind and realized that Su-yi had already broken free. A strange glint flashed in her eyes as she said solemnly, "There's still 15 minutes. Pass down the order to quickly prepare." Her cold words made everyone even more anxious. They began discussing the team's lineup and the order in which they would be sent down. No one cared about Su-yi's situation. Calm. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 1640. Duanmu's whisper instantly entered Su-yi's ears. Su-yi glanced over and his face sank. This was obviously Duanmu's feedback to him. The corners of his mouth immediately curled up slightly. Safely walking to Guyue's side, Li Shiran, Chu, and the others were already extremely excited when they saw Su-yi. They rushed forward with joy in their eyes. Su-yi took the lead and bowed deeply to Guyue. That day, when he was in a daze, Su-yi knew that it was Guyue who came to plead with the palace master for him to be spared. So he specially said formally, "Elder Guyue, I've made you worry again. Thank you very much. Miss Shiran, Chu, I've also made you worry." Su-yi smiled. Shiran and Chu had long become his younger sister and brother. He was always worried about them. Li Shiran and Chu were childish. As soon as Su-yi spoke, their tears flowed down uncontrollably. They shook their heads vigorously and said, "It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Palace Master Duanmu is actually an extremely good person. Big brother Su-yi, don't blame her. Zhuo Feng and those bastards have already been dealt with by Palace Master Duanmu. You can talk to Palace Master Duanmu properly. It's nothing. She won't make things too difficult for you." Su-yi nodded and smiled without saying anything. Then, he felt an extremely familiar aura beside him. The dragon soul in his heart was slightly shaken, and he immediately raised his eyes. A huge figure about 2 meters tall stood at the side, his eyes full of surprise. Su-yi couldn't help but ask curiously, "This is... Oh, big brother Su, this is..." Chu suddenly understood. Just as she was about to introduce, Han Yuro interrupted and looked at Su Yi's handsome face. Su Yi, this is my father, Infinite Sect Han Wulong. After saying this, Han Yuro's heart trembled. She bit her lips tightly, her fingers twirling in circles, and her eyebrows drooped. She seemed a little shy. While Su Yi was looking at Yuro strangely, his mind raced, and he couldn't help sucking in a breath of cold air. This was the leader of the Limitless Sect, the same terrifying power as the Holy Mountain, Han Wulong. He was not even 40 years old, but he was already at the 6th level of the Origin Ancestor stage. His talent was extraordinary, and he was 30 years ahead of ordinary people. Su Yi immediately looked serious and said in neither servile nor overbearing manner, "Greetings, Limitless Sect leader. I've heard so much about you. I didn't expect him to be so elegant." At this moment, Han Wulong's aura was fully unleashed, and his gaze was focused. The pressure of a 6th-level Yuan ancestor was enough to scare an ordinary cultivator like Su Yi out of his wits. On the other hand, Su Yi was strolling leisurely in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. The aura in his body circulated smoothly, and it even carried a heavy and ancient aura that transcended the heavens and the earth. He didn't fall into a disadvantageous position in the slightest, and this caused Chun Shi to exclaim with admiration in his heart. "That's right. Sect Leader Su's great name is like thunder to my ears. With such ability, it's no wonder that Palace Master Duanmu sees you in a different light." Sui smiled and said softly, "Miss Yuro often talks about you. I didn't expect you to be so young. Sui admires you." "Ha! Speaking of which, you saved Ro before. I, Han Wulong, owe you a huge favor. If you have any needs in the future, you can come to the Limitless Sect to find me. Han Wulong." Han Wulong raised his eyebrows and said loudly, "Father, is that true? You'll help Su Yi?" Han Yuro's eyes lit up as she asked Han Wulong in surprise. MM. As long as Su Yi has any requests, the Limitless Sect will definitely find a chance to return this favor," Han Wulong said firmly, each word like a gem. Su Yi couldn't help but feel joy in his heart. The Limitless Sect's size was as terrifying as the Sacred Mountain. If he could obtain the Limitless Sect leader's promise, it would be a huge gift. He then said, "Junior Su thanks you in advance." Han Wulong's broad and powerful palm gently rested on Su Yi's shoulder. He was shocked in his heart. How could this kid's bones be so tough? How could such a skinny body possess such strength? Little did he know that Su Yi's physical strength had already reached the level of a Sky Origin ancestor. It was enough to withstand Han Wulong's casual touch. On the other hand, Su Yi was calm and composed, and his expression didn't change. "Sect Leader Han, what advice do you have for me?" Su Yi asked softly. Han Wulong said in a low voice, "I will ensure that you don't die in the Heavenly Soul competition. After the competition, it will be the Heavenly Wind ranking tournament. No matter who you are fighting for, no matter what you think, you must squeeze out some time to make a trip to my Limitless Sect after the competition. This is no small matter. Sect Leader Su must take it seriously." When Su Yi heard this, his heart and soul trembled. Why did Han Wulong specially say this to him? After the Heavenly Soul competition, there were less than 10 days until the Heavenly Wind ranking tournament. If there were no accidents, Su Yi should be going to Yuzhou with the people from the Heavenly Palace. Why did he have to make a trip to the Limitless Sect? Could it be that there were some unforeseen circumstances? Or was it because of Han Yuro? Han Wulong's eyes were serious, and he didn't seem to be joking. Following which, Su Yi's expression also turned serious. He nodded heavily and said, "This kid will definitely go. Sect Leader Han can wait for this kid in the Limitless Sect. However, in the Heavenly Soul competition, I, Su Yi, will rely on my own strength. If I can't even protect my life, I believe that the Limitless Sect will be disappointed." "Ha ha ha. Kid, the more I look at you, the more I like you. In a while, you must take first place for me to see." Han Wulong laughed heartily and patted Su Yi's shoulder heavily. PFFF. Su Yi immediately lowered his shoulder and dissipated the force. He rolled his eyes in his heart. Even if an origin ancestor fought with his life on the line, it wouldn't be his solution. Then, he took a step forward and said awkwardly to Han Wulong, "This kid will do his best." Hearing the conversation between the two and hearing Su Yi's agreement, Han Yuro's face flushed red. She was delighted and immediately pulled Han Wulong to the side. She gently asked Han Wulong why he had invited Su Yi to the Limitless sect. Han Wulong waved his hand and said solemnly, "Focus on your competition. Don't think about other things. Strength, it's far from enough." Su Yi's heart was in turmoil. For Han Wulong to have such strength at such a young age, he could be considered one of the best in the 6 continents, 3 prefectures, and 1 sea. Although he was still young and couldn't be compared to the 100-year-old sacred venerates or Duanmu Xiaoman, his lifespan would continue to increase along with his cultivation on the martial path. In the future, he would have a great chance of becoming the #1 in Yinzhou. In comparison, Lu Xian's speed was too slow. Furthermore, he didn't have much time left. There was still a little more than 2.5 years left before the 5-year agreement. There were still many things that he had yet to do when he reached the origin ancestor realm. So he couldn't help but think to himself. First, it was great ancestor Shunjian. Now, it was Han Wulong and Duanmu Xiaoman. One mountain after another appeared in front of Su Yi. What made Su Yi feel even more strange was that the imperial celestial art in his body was clearly of a higher level than the other people in Imperial Celestial Palace, just like Duanmu Xiaoman. If that was the case, who was the person at the bottom of the cliff? What kind of connection did he have with Imperial Celestial Palace? He would probably have to ask Duanmu Xiaoman to know. Chapter 1641. Even someone as strong as that old man would be restrained by a powerful barrier. Su Yi's determination to become stronger immediately emerged in his heart. The glory and the world that the old man had seen were things that Su Yi longed for. Su Yi knew that when he was in the origin ancestor realm, that old man wanted to save him. The barbarian Demon Valley was the starting point of his martial path. This understanding of the world was what ultimately made Su Yi decide to let Duanmu Xiaoman guide him. And now, only with the guidance of an absolute expert would he be able to make sufficient progress. The Heavenly Wind Ranking Tournament was a top-notch martial competition that was held once every 60 years. Su Yi had to quickly become stronger so that he could face the 8 revered saints and the 100 Heroes Palace. If he continued to work hard, he would eventually ascend to the peak of martial path. Su Yi's face suddenly darkened. He could feel a lightning-like killing intent surging towards his heart from afar. Su Yi probed with his mind and could feel that a handsome man was staring at him. Everyone present had their own team, and only he was alone. Su Yi couldn't help but be curious. That's Zhuqiu Feng's disciple, the current #1 person of the same generation in the Heavenly Drive Palace, Jun Haoyan. The elders valued talent and considered that there was nothing wrong with him, so they let him stay. They let him participate in the Heavenly Drive Soul competition this time. If there are no accidents, he will also be allowed to participate in the Heavenly Wind Ranking Tournament. Guyue walked forward and sighed slightly. Looking at the lonely Jun Haoyan in the distance, he sighed in his heart. Su Yi was startled. The #1 person of the same generation in the Heavenly Drive Palace. Su Yi raised his head and looked at Jun Haoyan carefully. He muttered in his heart, "That's the 4th grade mid-genius that the Heavenly Drive Palace disciples highly praised, Jun Haoyan." Looking at him carefully, Jun Haoyan's cultivation was equivalent to the 5th or 6th level of the Origin Emperor realm in his early 30s. He was indeed worthy of him making a move. Not to mention that he was a soul controller master that specialized in the soul. It was definitely worth it for him to strike with all his might. Soul manipulation masters were stronger than ordinary cultivators. Back then, Merciless West was able to compete with Lord Fire Dragon, who was at the 6th level of the Origin Emperor realm. This Jun Haoyan was definitely a good whetstone. Good. Elder Guyue, has our Lingue Peak made the necessary arrangements? How are we going to fight? What's the order? Su Yi turned to look at Elder Guyue. He always knew that you wouldn't miss the Heavenly Rider Soul competition, so he never stopped teaching Ran, and Chua. Elder Gyue said to Sui. Lingyu Peak's arrangement was still the same as before. Han Yuro, Li Shiran, and Achu were to participate in the alchemy competition, while Tian Wu was to participate in the artifact refining competition. Meanwhile, Sui didn't have any worries. He swam towards the depths to his heart's content, swimming towards the miracle of commanding Heavenly Palace. Sect Master Su, with this arrangement, you'll be able to focus on achieving first place in both soul cultivation and martial cultivation for Lingyue Peak. You'll also be rewarded by the Palace Master. What do you think? Sui muttered to himself. The corner of his mouth curled up slightly as he said to Elder Gyue, Senior, come. This time, Lingyue Peak will get 4 first places. After saying that, Sui brought the people from Lingyue Peak to the other side of the Broken Sword Ocean, a remote place with fewer people. Gyue couldn't help but feel suspicious. Sui always had endless ideas in his mind. Sui pulled the people from Lingyue Peak down and said softly, Shiran, Chu Lady Euro, Brother Tian Chong. Firstly, Lady Euro, you're a half-step Origin Emperor. What's the highest level you can swim? To the maximum. Hanyuro thought for a while. Alchemy and artifact refining were all within 7,000 meters. Heaven and Earth Great Elixir pills were extremely rare, so she could only refine Black Great Elixir pills at most. In that case, she would have to swim 4 to 5,000 meters. 4 to 5,000 meters. It might be a little strenuous. Hanyuro was a little embarrassed. Sui was someone who wanted to boast that he could swim 20,000 meters. She could only swim 4,000 meters. It was a little awkward. Sui nodded and looked at Tian Ho. Tian Ho, who was also a little nervous, said to Sui, I should be able to swim 5,000 meters. Sui smiled and said to Tian Ho and Han Yuro, I believe in you. Moreover, Brother Tian Chang's diving depth is already enough. Both of you have heaven-grade soul spirits. You can definitely break through the limit. Back then, his big brother, Merciless West, who was a 3rd-level Origin Emperor, had difficulty diving below 5,000 meters. However, in terms of soul quality, Han Yuro and Tian Ho, who had heaven-grade soul spirits, had already made up for it. Also, have you prepared the elixir pills and fire cauldron that you're going to refine? Sui asked again. We prepared them. However, compared to others, we don't have much of an advantage. We might have to compete for a higher ranking by diving. Gyue said with a slightly dry voice. After the Middle State, all his treasures and life's work were in the Imperial Palace of the Middle State. Later on, they were all handed over to the Zhongzhen Library. He didn't keep anything for himself. All those Wuqiufeng had fallen. As the owner of Lingyue Peak, Gyue would rather borrow from elder vassal than bear the reputation of taking advantage of the situation. That's great. The elixir pills that I'm going to ask you to refine, although the refining conditions are extremely harsh, the grade isn't low. It's at the high level of the profound grade. Have you heard of the 9 Revolutions Divine Pill? Sui looked at everyone without blinking. There seemed to be light in his eyes. Wow. Everyone on Lingyue Peak frowned. As an alchemist, Tian Ho and Han Yuro had naturally heard of the 9 Revolutions Divine Pill. Gyue was even more speechless. Could it be that Sect Master Sui wants them to refine the 9 Revolutions Divine Pill? Yes. Sui nodded heavily. But we don't have the most important ingredient for the 9 Revolutions Divine Pill, the 9 Revolutions Dragon Scale Grass. Moreover, it requires 3 soul controllers with heaven-grade souls to refine it at the same time. It's very difficult to fulfill such harsh conditions. Tian Ho was a little disappointed as he nodded. Do you think this is enough? Sui smiled gently. Sui threw out a space bag and handed it to Tian Ho. Tian Ho opened the space bag a little skeptically. Boom! Immediately, a surge of spiritual energy that was so abundant that it could not be dispersed rushed into Tian Wu's nose. Everyone's meridians seemed to be flooded with an extremely warm current. The abundant medicinal power flowed through their wide meridians and finally gathered in their dantian. Threads of energy turned into yuan qi, and it was very comfortable. The lingering medicinal power blew on their faces like a strong wave. Everyone's eyes lit up at once. When they took a closer look, there were more than 10 perfectly grown 9 revolutions dragon scale grass inside. The crystal-clear branches and leaves were engraved with dragon, scale-like patterns. The blood-red branches and leaves were shining brightly in the space bag. The dragon scale grass emitted an extremely demonic light. The blood-red light was flawless and dazzling, causing everyone on Lingyue Peak to exclaim, "Come, wonderful book house." Chapter 1642. 9-turn dragon scale grass. Looking at such a perfect 9-turn dragon scale grass, Li Shi ran, Tian Wu, and the rest began to breathe rapidly. Such a perfect 9-turn dragon scale grass could definitely be used to refine a perfect 9-turn god refining pill. It was even possible for it to be at the early stage of the Earth grade. The value of such a 9 revolutions spirit refining pill could be imagined. It would definitely cause a sensation in the entire Yutian Palace. The 9-turn dragon scale grass was already rare in the world, and it was very likely to be at the early stage of the Earth grade. Everyone immediately understood why Su wanted to bring everyone to a remote place. This was the key to their victory in this alchemy competition. There's still something inside, Brother Tian Chong. Look carefully. Su Yi's mouth gradually curved into a mysterious smile, as if there were endless treasures inside. Tian Wu carefully placed more than 10 9-turn dragon scale herbs to the side. He saw that there were many spiritual herbs and basic materials needed for alchemy in his interspatial bag. Every stalk of herb was extremely perfect, glowing with a lustrous light, and the dense medicinal qi was incomparably condensed. They were all ingredients that alchemists yearned for even in their dreams. This, Brother Sui, where did you get all of this from? Every single one of them is in perfect condition and is priceless. Tian Wu's eyes were about to fall to the ground. His hands that were holding the space were slightly trembling, and his face was filled with surprise and shock. The surprise that Su Yi brought to them this time was simply too big. Su Yi laughed heartily, his clear eyes filled with pride. It turned out that Su Yi had already woken up, but he came a little late. Not only did Su Yi pick out the spiritual herbs from the 100 Herb Academy's disciples, he also took out some of the best 9-turn dragon scale grass and turned over the entire medicinal field, all for the sake of taking first place in the alchemy competition in one fell swoop. Great, this time we'll definitely take first place in the alchemy competition. Achu was overjoyed. Because of her excitement, her little face was flushed and her eyes were shining. Elder Guiyue's benevolent and vicissitudes of life face was also extremely excited. He muttered, "Not bad, but Chuer, you still can't lower your guard. Although Sect Master Su provided you with the best external conditions. However, the 9 Revolutions Divine Pill was not that easy to refine. You must do your best and do your best." Sui also said so. That's what I meant when I asked you. I believe Brother Tian Chong knows the refining method better than I do. As for the depth, it's more than enough. Then Su Yi said to Tian Wu, "Brother Tian Wu, you are the main character of Lingyue Peak in this soul riding competition. You must listen to what I'm about to say. And we can't afford to lose even half a point." All right, everyone felt a chill in their hearts. It seemed that Su Yi already had a complete and detailed plan in his heart. The next part was the main point. Han Wulong, who was standing at the side, didn't say a word, but he was already amazed in his heart. This brat is extraordinarily courageous, intelligent, and resolute in his actions. In just a few short moves, everything has been revealed. He was indeed a moldable talent. Sigh, what AF asterisk king pity. How good would it be to be my son-in-law? Thinking of this, Han Wulong's face sank and his brows furrowed. Looking at his daughter, Han Yuro, looking at Su Yi affectionately as if she was glowing, Han Wulong's heart felt even more uncomfortable. "Su Yi, tell me. I'll definitely do it well," Tian Wu said resolutely. Su-yi nodded and lowered his voice to the lowest. He said, "The 9 Revolutions Divine Pill is a high-tier, mysterious grade pill. So, you'll have to swim as far as 5,000 meters to guarantee that you'll pass. Secondly, there should be 2 flatlands at 5,000 meters. Although the distance between the 2 places isn't too far, for you who are focused on refining, running back and forth will be a challenge. First, you and Euro will use your soul pressure to form a spiritual shield. Then, bring Chu and Ran to 2 flatlands. Then, you'll start refining pills." Everyone listened attentively. Su-yi continued, "What we should start with is the refining project. Tian-ho will take Chu to lay the foundation for refining, choose the type of weapon to cultivate, and control the materials and the temperature. When the refining reaches a certain level, Chu will be given the task." Liao said. Su-yi looked at Chu with a serious expression and said, "Chu, when the time comes, it'll be time for your heaven-grade soul to shine. Although the surrounding soul pressure is huge, it's also an excellent environment for refining. You'll take over from Tian Wu, inject soul energy, and finish the finishing work. Can you do it?" Chu's heart burned like a flame when she heard this. She nodded heavily and said, "Of course, Brother Su. I promise to complete the task. Chu will do what I say." Thinking of the day when Zwichio Phone was in the Heaven Riding Soul competition and the ridicule and disdain of everyone, young Chu seemed to be overflowing with flames. She roared and couldn't wait to throw herself into the refining. Good. In the previous tests, Su-yi could see that although Chu's cultivation was relatively low, the quality of her soul was high and her perseverance was amazing. Su-yi believed that Chu would be able to complete such a heavy task. Su-yi then said, "Ran, you lay the foundation for the 9 Revolutions soul refining pill. When Tian Wu comes, the 3 of you will work together to refine the 9 Revolutions soul refining pill." Okay, Ran, Han Yuro, Chu, and Tian Wu all agreed. This arrangement couldn't be more suitable. Not only would they work together, but they would also make the best use of everyone's talents. Everyone's strengths would be maximized. Tian Wu took a deep breath. His heart was still heavy. This time, his goal was to get 4 first places. He couldn't afford to lose. He said softly, "Not only the 9 Revolutions soul refining pill, but also the refining. Ran, you said that the soul testing crystal belongs to me. Do you mean it?" Su-yi smiled. Ran and Chu nodded and said heavily, "Of course. The sacred mountain recognizes you as its master. Everything in the sacred mountain belongs to you, big brother Su-yi." After saying this, Ran knew that she said something wrong, but she didn't know what was wrong. She suddenly blushed, and her delicate and charming appearance suddenly had a touch of cuteness. "Okay." Su-yi raised his eyebrows. Su-yi fumbled in his chest and took out another space bag. He handed it to Tian Wu and said, "Brother Tian Wu, I'll give this to you. The refining competition will depend on you. You must do well for Lingwei Peak." When they heard about the soul-testing crystal, Old Man Gyue and Han Wulong frowned and thought, "Soul-testing crystal? Does this kid still have another soul-testing crystal? How many good things does this kid have hidden?" As soon as he took the space bag, he felt that it was many times heavier than before. It was as if it was going to fall to the ground. An extremely rich spiritual qi in the shape of a dragon poured into Tian Wu's body. Suddenly, the unique spiritual qi of the primordial stone filled Tian Wu's body. Tian Wu hurriedly used the art of controlling the heavens to smooth out this terrifying and sticky spiritual qi. Come, wonderful book house. Chapter 1643. Full of anticipation and excitement, Tian Wu swallowed his saliva and opened the space bag with trembling hands. After a few breaths, he finally dared to open his eyes. There was a loud explosion in the sky, and a dazzling light appeared. Boom! A tyrannical beam of light shot straight into the clouds. It wasn't a waterfall, nor was it a critical strike. It was just pure energy from vitality stones. Above the void, an astonishingly majestic beam of light burst out, whistling into the sky. Whoosh! The clouds were instantly shattered, and a few scattered golden lights shot down through the dark clouds. The mottled light shone on the faces of Sue, E, and the others, and it was very dazzling. Suddenly, the few of them were astonished. What exactly was this power? How could there be such a majestic and abundant energy? Tian Chong quickly turned his mind and closed the space bag. He did not have the time nor the courage to look at it carefully to avoid making a fuss, so he only gave it a cursory glance. He estimated that there were more than 300 soul-testing crystals and countless artifact refining ores in there. There were all kinds of ores and limestones of various grades. They were all excellent materials for refining and were extremely rare. They were all priceless treasures. It was as if the best things in a second-rate sect had been snatched away. He smiled in his heart. If those guys from the Sacred Mountain knew that they had given their things to the Heavenly Command Palace, would they die of anger? Thinking of this, he felt a sense of satisfaction. More importantly, this was only a small portion. It was enough for the Heavenly Command Soul competition this time. The rest would be given to the Bawang sect for the sect's construction. Tian Ho's eyes were already on the verge of fainting. That terrifying light beam was still enveloping Tian Ho's body. The energy that soared into the sky and the beam of light dissipated into pieces, but it still contained an extremely vigorous soul energy. The space was faintly distorted, and under the powerful soul energy, the surrounding space suddenly froze. Oh my God, Master, he has brought all the best treasures. Such a shocking force instantly attracted countless all-like gazes. Tianho hurriedly covered the interspatial bag tightly and told Guyue everything about it. Hearing this, Guyue's usually calm face was filled with uncontrollable excitement. He knew that the beam of light just now was extraordinary, and he immediately laughed heartily. The heavens are really helping my Lingyue peak. Ha ha! Schoolmaster Su, this old man is in awe. Guyue kept shaking his head while looking at Su Yi with a strange light in his eyes. This brat was the real miracle of the Imperial Palace. Han Wulong was also amazed. The admiration in his eyes for Su Yi turned into admiration. How terrifying! This brat's talent is astonishing. I'm afraid that he must have encountered all kinds of strange encounters. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so generous. Rubbing his chin, Han Wulong's eyes flickered. He muttered in his heart, Su Yi, this brat, no matter what the Imperial Palace thinks, my limitless sect must try our best to rope him in. It's also good to pull down the Sacred Mountain. Ha, Elder Guyue, what kind of treasure is hidden so tightly? Why don't you share it with us, brothers? Luo Wuya and Long Pasan had already sensed Guyue's excitement and asked loudly. Only Guyue stroked his beard and smiled without saying anything. He narrowed his eyes and said loudly, Let's wait and see. Che, what's there to be proud of? Even if Su Yi comes, he can only get first place at most. I don't believe that you could take all of it. In addition to Elder Ho, there were also some ordinary elders who said angrily, full of dissatisfaction. This old man, he came to borrow something from me before, and now he's hiding it again. How dishonest. Luo Wuya scolded with a smile. Long Pasan, on the other hand, was somewhat mysterious. He said to Guyue, How about it? Elder Gu, you're beaming with joy as soon as Su Yi brat arrived. I haven't seen you so happy in so many years. How about we open a bet? Brothers, let's have some fun? Ha ha ha, I think so. Guyue was already smiling as he said softly. Luo Wuya and Long Pasan looked at each other and smiled. They looked at Ling Yu Peak's group mysteriously, as if they had a card up their sleeves. Their eyes rippled with anticipation. Su Yi restrained his expression, looked at everyone and said, Let's do it this way. Since we've come to Broken Sword Ocean, we'll have to bear all the dangers below. Hearing this, Guyue pondered for a moment and said, However, Chur, your cultivation is still low. When you enter the ocean, you must follow Chong, and Euro well. Although there won't be any sea demons from 1 to 7,000 meters, people's hearts are hard to predict. Today is the Imperial Palace Soul Competition. Everyone will make different decisions in the face of life and death. You must be careful. Yes, master. Li Shiran and Chu's faces were serious. Gu Yue's words were very reasonable. There are sea demons below, Elder Gu Yue? Han Yuro asked suspiciously. Ha ha ha, silly girl. Broken Sword Ocean is famous for being a dangerous place. If there are savage beasts on land, there will naturally be savage beasts at the bottom of the ocean as well. Moreover, the thing inside hibernates all year round and never comes out. It might be a 10,000-year-old beast. Have you seen a demon ancestor realm savage beast before? Demon ancestor realm. Han Yuro's eyes flashed with a trace of panic. Savage beasts of the same level would definitely be stronger than human martial artists of the same level because of their bloodline. Therefore, a demon ancestor realm demon must be a big ancient demon with heaven-defying strength. He was a little serious, and his heart was filled with suspicion. There's a demon ancestor realm savage beast here? This was because apart from Ling Lanin and handsome Su, he had never seen a demon ancestor realm big ancient demon. The development of the demon tribe actually followed the order of time. The first great demon gods, including the rocks, phoenixes, and golden dragons, had existed since the beginning of time. During the ancient times, after generations of reproduction, they became the 9 spirit lynx and the heavenly snow ape that represented the ancient demon tribe. Later on, the bloodline diverged and there were too many branches, giving birth to a variety of big ancient demons. Shuizhong was one of them. In the recent thousands of years, the big ancient demon tribe's bloodline weakened again, just like the Kanglin gold beast represented by Akatsuki. However, these were all true demonic beasts. Below them, they couldn't even be considered demonic beasts. They were just barbaric beasts. They couldn't be any lower. Demon gods, ancient demon sovereigns, 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 and finally, barbaric demon beasts. The history of the demon sovereigns was actually the history of the entire continent. He could not help but wonder, so humans and demons have existed at the same time since ancient times? Then, the existence of Tian Yao School is naturally forbidden by the world. Where did the demon come from? With this connection, the existence and extinction of the demon tribe was closely related to the ancient disaster. His thoughts turned. Looking at the Duanmu Shao Man in the distance, He felt that the Duanmu Shao Man was hiding too many secrets. Chapter 1644. Roar. The gloomy sky began to stir. He said in a low voice, Sect Master Han's words don't make sense. However, since Palace Master Duanmu has chosen to hold the competition at the Broken Sword Ocean, he must have set up some restrictions. It's extremely safe, so don't worry and just do what you have to do. Victory is victory. He comforted everyone. That's right. Let's prepare to enter the ocean. Gyue stroked his beard as his eyes lit up. Sect Leader Su, you should be extra careful. As far as I know, no one has ever gone below 20,000 meters. And there are indeed ancient demonic beasts in the Broken Sword Ocean. Furthermore, they are extremely large and their soul attacks are extremely terrifying. There are records of them in the Imperial Palace's library. Gyue gently pulled Su-yi to the side. Looking at Gyue, Su-yi nodded slightly. It seemed like there would be a fierce battle in the Broken Sword Ocean. Time's up. Prepare to enter the ocean. Luo Wuya's deep voice filled the air. Everyone stopped their discussions and plans and raised their heads to look at Palace Master Duanmu. Everyone was waiting for the first person to enter the ocean. No one wanted to stand out. Hey, someone's going down. Who's so impatient? So fast. Everyone come and see. Someone's entering the ocean. So fast. Who is it? Who's so daring? Right at this moment, a beam of light shot towards the Broken Sword Ocean like a meteor, like a sharp sword cutting through the sky. The dark clouds were cut in half, and the clouds on both sides were quickly split into two halves like turbid waves. Su-yi, I'll wait for you at 15,000 meters. I hope you'll be able to reach there alive. A roar that could shatter the void instantly caused boundless ripples in the air. One circle after another, the wind and clouds changed color as if the ripples in the air were being torn apart. The extremely terrifying sound wave carried an extremely terrifying aura, causing the violent winds in the broken sword ocean to rise high into the air. Above the fog-shrouded ocean, light shone from the eastern horizon, dispersing the darkness and revealing the broken sword mountain. Bang! Like a cannonball, the sound reverberated through the clouds and rushed to the peak of the 9 heavens. He's entering the ocean. When the Imperial Palace disciples heard Su-yi's name, they all looked at Su-yi strangely as if they were watching a show. Following that, the soul-stirring sound that was like a heavy stone that fell into the ocean caused a boundless storm in the souls of Su-yi and everyone. Whoosh! Everyone immediately gathered at the edge of the Broken Sword Sea's cliff, sucking in a breath of cold air. Their hair stood on end as they stared fixedly at Duanmu Xiaoman's light screen. It's Jun Haoyan. What a speed. Did he fly down? The first person who entered the ocean first. What did he just say? Waiting for Su-yi at 15,000 meters. The emotions of all the Juqian Palace disciples were suddenly stirred up. Some were excited, some were scared, and some were worried. They all cast their gazes towards Su-yi in the distance. Su-yi's expression was dignified. Instead, he boldly ran to the side and ignored them. Unknowingly, Jun Haoyan had regarded Su-yi as his greatest enemy. He originally wanted to use the Imperial Soul competition to change his image in the Imperial Palace, but Su-yi's arrival changed everything. How could he accept this? This was an insult to his status as the #1 disciple of the Imperial Palace and a trampling on the dignity of his sect. This time, the Heaven Riding Soul competition is really going to be fun to watch. The elders and teaching elders all had serious expressions. The competition between the older generation had turned into a battle between Jun Haoyan and Su-yi. Not only did this competition include the agreement between Su-yi and Duanmu Xiaoman, but it also included the competition between Jun Haoyan and Su-yi. In an instant, the atmosphere of the competition reached a small climax. Long Pasan couldn't help but slap his forehead with a bitter expression. Too late, too late. Sigh, I told you not to stop me, and let me open a bet. But now, I'm just a spectator. Hey, old Luo, do you think it's too late? Long Pasan poked Luo Wuya. Luo Wuya chuckled and walked straight to the light screen. He waved his sleeve and said, Let's take a good look first. Take a look at where Jun Haoyan is. Everyone came to the edge of the cliff and looked at the light screen. A dot of light was rapidly sinking. The surface of the sea was calm and gloomy. The murderous wind blew and huge waves came one after another, each higher than the last. This Jun Haoyan has been holding back for a long time. It's been hard on him. Luo Wuyan narrowed his eyes. His robe was fluttering because of the wind. At this time, those who are good at soul cultivation will be able to display a level higher than before. Long Pasan also narrowed his eyes and nodded. 1,000 meters. The Imperial Soul Palace disciples were shocked. In just a few breaths of time, Jun Haoyan was like a dragon swimming in the sea, moving as he pleased. His speed was extremely terrifying. None of the Imperial Soul Palace disciples had yet to enter the sea. They were all watching Jun Haoyan's great display of power. This was a show of strength to the Imperial Soul Palace disciples. The Broken Sword Sea was formed by the sea. This was once an ancient battlefield. There are a lot of undead here, and the deeper you go, the denser your soul energy will become. At 5,000 meters, it's not just the natural water pressure. Just the gloomy aura alone will make it hard for a normal soul personage to resist. Elder Vassal carefully analyzed each word. This brat is not bad. He has some skill. 2,000 meters. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. It was as if something was stuck in their throats, and they couldn't say a word. Everyone knew that Jun Haoyan's heart was burning with fire. This speed and talent were not enough. If it was an ordinary talent, it would be better not to enter the water. Luo Wuya glanced at Duanmu Xiaoman from the corner of his eyes. Her face was still as cold as ice, cold and arrogant as ever. She looked at the screen, quietly without any reaction. It was as if no matter how heaven-defying Jun Hao Tian was, Duanmu Xiaoman couldn't care less. Suddenly, a boundless soul pressure and aura surged through the crowd. Luo Wuya shook his body and shouted to everyone, Jun Hao Ian has entered the sea first. Everyone, get ready to enter the sea. Don't waste time. Immediately, the soul cultivators who were participating in alchemy and crafting looked at each other. Their eyes flickered as they were pushed by their elders into the sea one by one. On the light screen, the dense dots of light began to disperse. A small portion of them had already begun to swim down, but compared to Jun Hao Ian, their speed was like the difference between heaven and earth. The soul cultivators who were participating in the melee had ugly expressions. Some were unwilling, and some even had thoughts of withdrawing. They all stopped. Chapter 1645. A disciple looked at the screen in front of him and gulped. What's the point of competing? It's already 2,000 meters. Even if I can reach 10,000 meters, I'm still far behind the others. Yeah, you're looking even deeper. Besides, his target is Su Yi. Why would he bother with us? Why waste our time? 3,000 meters. 4,000 meters. 5,000 meters. In less than a quarter of an hour, Jun Hao Ian had reached 5,000 meters. However, after that, his speed began to slow down. He was no longer as fast as before, but he was still stronger than the others. Beside Linghua Peak, Tian Ho and Chu also began to walk to the edge of the cliff. They looked at the screen and frowned. Chu, are you scared? No, brother Tian Chong. I'll try my best to keep up with you. Chu's cultivation was low, and she had just started cultivating the art of driving the heavens. In just a few days, she had already grasped some of the basic techniques of driving the soul. Immediately, she began to cultivate the art of driving the heavens. Tianho looked at Chu and nodded. Okay, I'll put up a light shield. Just follow me. The Juqin Palace disciple who had been hesitating at the edge of the cliff took the opportunity to speak when he saw that Su Yi was the only one missing from Linghua Peak. Where's Su Yi? Is he too scared to come after seeing how fast senior brother Jun is? Several disciples didn't want to go down. When they saw that Su Yi was still talking to Li Shiran, they sneered loudly. The ordinary elders also looked serious as they watched Elder Gyue and Su Yi's reaction. Yeah, senior brother Jun has already reached the 5 kilometers mark. Are you, Su Yi, ready to admit defeat? Turtles are always slower than others. Ha ha! Duanmu Xiaoman listened to these words with a trace of disgust in her eyes. However, she still didn't show it. She felt strange when she felt Su Yi behind her move. F*CKU. My brother Su doesn't need you to care when he goes down. You're a turtle. Your whole family are turtles. Brother Su Yi, why aren't you playing? Could it be that he's afraid of water? He's just a tortoise. Ah, not showing any weakness. Chu's temper was also extremely bad. He repeatedly scolded the few brats from the Imperial Celestial Palace. He challenged several of them alone and did not seem to be at a disadvantage at all. Luo Wuya, Long Pashan, and the others were also very curious. They thought to themselves, what is this little brat thinking? Jun Hao Ian is really going to surpass him. Gu Yue walked over with Guanlan, Yin Lu, and Yun Ding, 3 vice palace masters behind him. Han Wulong and Han Yuro followed closely behind them, shouting angrily. You brats, what did you just say? Han Wulong's tiger-like eyes widened. His heart was filled with displeasure. How dare he scold Su Yi like that? In any case, he was still someone his daughter cared about. The few disciples of Heavenly Command Palace immediately shut their mouths. The elder in front of them walked out and said, Did I say something wrong? Don't tell me you want to be the last one to enter the water. After all, Han Wulong was an outsider of the Imperial Celestial Palace. With the palace master here, many ordinary elders became bolder. At this time, Su Yi had finished talking with Li Shiran. Li Shiran nodded solemnly. She put away a space bag in her arms and gently wiped the tears from her eyes. Good Shiran, you have to do your best. This way, your Li family's reputation won't be in vain. Do you understand? Su-yi smiled slightly, but he felt extremely helpless in his heart. If it wasn't for this, how could he have given Elder Tong and the others a chance to take advantage of him? Li Shiran's eyes were filled with tears. Hearing the words of the disciples of Imperial Celestial Palace behind her, she immediately said, Okay, Brother Su-yi, watch me. Those people are provoking us again. It's really annoying. Su-yi's eyes were clear and bright. The primordial qi in his body had been circulated to the extreme. He walked over with Li Shiran. Seeing Han Wulong and Ah Chu fiercely facing all the disciples of Imperial Celestial Palace who had not yet entered the water, he said with a smile, Of course you have to enter the water, but if you wait for me, then I'll have to ask you, do you want to besiege me? Several disciples of Imperial Celestial Palace quickly nodded and said softly, How is that possible? Su-yi crossed his arms. He was not in a hurry. He glanced at Duanmu Xiaoman and then looked at the light screen in front of him. Many of the soul cultivators of Imperial Celestial Palace and weapon refining had already entered the water. The soul cultivators of alchemy and weapon refining clearly did not have enough soul energy. When they entered the water, their speed slowed down and it was very difficult. If you don't besiege me, then you don't dare to enter the water. Sad. Sad. It's really sad that Imperial Celestial Palace raised people like you. Su-yi sighed helplessly. Several disciples and elders of Imperial Celestial Palace immediately choked, and their faces turned red. They immediately urged their disciples and said, Quickly go down. Bang, bang, bang. More than 100 sounds of people entering the water were like a chain of cannonballs. At this time, besides the elders of Imperial Celestial Palace, everyone else had already entered the water. Only the people of Lingyue Peak were left. Are you going to give up on the competition? Duanmu Xiaoman's beautiful face slowly turned around and looked at Su-yi. Palace Lord Duanmu, you're wrong. Since Lingyue Peak has always been looked down upon, then we'll amaze the world with a single feat and be the last to enter the water. We'll also let those people see what true strength is. Su-yi shot a glance at the teaching elders and ordinary elders who had mocked him just now, and they were all embarrassed. Tianho and Han Yuro behind him were even more confident. They knew the principle of striking first to gain the upper hand. Right now, everything would be according to Su-yi's will. Su-yi turned around and looked at Elder Yue. Palace Lord Gu, do you trust this brat? Of course, just do it. This old man will accompany you. Gu Yue chuckled. His kind face was full of fighting spirit. Gu Yue could roughly guess Su-yi's intention. Since they were already prepared, they must have the courage to cut off all means of retreat. Only by forcing themselves into a desperate situation would they be able to unleash their full potential. Just like Jun Haoyin, Su-yi was also digging for himself and spurring on the 5 people of Lingyue Peak. Lingyue Peak's talents had withered. It wasn't considered famous in the entire Imperial Celestial Palace. Tianho was only ranked 10th. Su-yi wanted Lingyue Peak to reach a new peak after the Imperial Celestial Soul competition. From now on, Lingyue Peak would change into an existence that people looked up to. Gu Yue had been bullied many times because of Su-yi. Su-yi wanted to fight for Gu Yue and Lingyue Peak. He wanted to take back everything that was lost. Elder Long, didn't you want to open a bet? I'll have to trouble you to be a witness. Today, I want to make a bet with Palace Lord Duanmu in the name of Lingyue Peak. For first places, the dozens of ordinary elders and vassal elders were shocked. Even Duanmu Qingtian had only gotten 2 first places back then. How could this scattered group of 2s and 3s get 4 first places? You sure talk big, Duanmu Xiaoman replied gently. Looking at Su-yi, a proud figure appeared in her mind. Sister, just watch. I could take 4 first places. In her mind, the young figure that appeared in front of Duanmu Xiaoman turned into fragments and dissipated. Chapter 1646. Sky Bearing. Duanmu Xiaoman's eyes lost focus for a moment. She quickly regained her composure and calmed down. Long Passion's interest was piqued. His eyes glowed as he asked, "What kind of bet? Our Lingua Peak will be the last to enter the water, but we will definitely take first place. If we can do it, Palace Master Duanmu, you have to tell me where my family is and also tell me something I want to know. You're negotiating with me?" Duanmu Xiaoman looked at Su Yi and seemed to have guessed something. The corner of her mouth curled up slightly as she looked at Su Yi with a burning gaze. Su Yi's eyes were like divine pawns as he circulated the Origin Supreme technique. He smiled faintly as the familiar art of driving the heavens swept through the world. Everyone's heart and soul trembled. The art of driving the heavens is as powerful as the palace masters. The eyes of the elders sparkled. "You're much stronger than me, but I know that I might be able to help you," Su Yi asked. Duanmu Xiaoman's proud chest heaved up and down. She then said softly, "I hope you won't regret it in the future. These muddy waters are not easy to wade in." "So what if I can't do it?" Long Pasan interjected. The bet was not about rewards. There were gains and losses. "If I can't do it, you can do whatever you want." Su Yi was extremely determined. Without the slightest hesitation, Duanmu Xiaoman said softly. Her eyes moved as she looked at Su Yi and said, "Okay, enter the water." Boom! Su Yi's heart trembled as he began to form hand seals. He looked at the people of Driving the Heavens Palace who had all entered the water. Hundreds of light dots sank to different depths. Immediately after, his closed eyes opened again, and an extremely fierce light surged out in front of him. At this time, all of his aura had already burst out. Soaring 100 transformation steps. As soon as he finished speaking, he channeled Yuan Qi under his feet. A fiery red ball of light spread out from his body. A monstrous aura soared into the sky and instantly enveloped the entire horizon. Su Yi, who had leaped high into the air, released an extremely terrifying aura that instantly tore apart the surrounding energy waves. At the same time, Ling Yefeng and the other 4 cultivators were swept up by the hurricane. The pair of wings on their backs kept flapping, causing the surrounding temperature to rise. Immediately after that, the soul energy around Ling Yefeng and the other 4 cultivators kept circulating. His resolute face was filled with endless fighting spirit and surging anger. Since he was fully prepared, he would naturally lower his guard. Now that Su Yi had forced everyone into a desperate situation, he had unleashed all of his potential. Lingua Peak. Enter the sea. Bang, 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 bang. 5 streams of fire like high-temperature fluctuations rapidly descended from the sky. Following 5 thunderous explosions, everyone was smashed into the sea of broken swords. The vast and seemingly endless shocking fog was mercilessly torn apart. The high waves began to surge, and 5 water arrows quickly appeared at the bottom of the sea. The huge power that rushed into the sea allowed them to reach a depth of a few hundred meters in just a few years. At the same time, the entire sea of broken swords was filled with an obscure aura and pressure that rapidly spread to the bodies of the 5 cultivators. They could feel a shocking aura beginning to spread. Their breathing began to stagnate, and their entire meridians seemed to be blocked by a huge soul pressure. Han Yuro, Tian Wu, and the others continued to sink with Li Shiran and Ah Chu, but their speed was far slower than Su Yi's. A few hundred meters. His speed is also astonishing. Long Passion's face lit up. Su Yi's speed is not weak, but the last 4 light spots have begun to slow down. Luo Wuya said, looking at Elder Guyue with a worried expression. Elder Guyue also had a solemn expression. On the light screen, the 5 light spots instantly rushed to a depth of a few hundred meters. Looking at Jun Haoyan, he was already advancing towards 6,000 meters. His speed had slowed down, but he was still strong and did not look like he was going to stop. Even Jun Haoyan is a little weak. Everyone's eyes were on Su Yi's light spot and the light spot at the bottom of the light screen. The intersection between them was the most interesting part of this soul-controlling competition. Most of the light spots were at 2,000 or 3,000 meters. The soul-controlling and refining cultivators were constantly advancing towards 4,000 or 5,000 meters. Some of them simply began refining at 2 or 3,000 meters. Those who participated in the melee had long given up on the idea. They couldn't even beat Jun Haoyin on flat ground. Now that Su-yi was added to the mix, and they were still at the bottom of the sea of broken swords, they had to make plans for themselves. Under the sea, tornado-like whirlpools constantly revolve around Su-yi and the others, making a loud, whooshing sound that shook their hearts and souls. Under the spread of this energy sound, the fluctuations of the entire seabed had reached a terrifying level, as if the whole world had begun to shake and tremble. Whoosh! According to the plan, Tian Wu and Han Yuro began to circulate their soul energy, and two huge soul light shields enveloped each other. In contrast, Li Shiran and Ah Chu, who had just entered the sea, seemed to be very powerless. On one hand, they had to sink, and on the other hand, they had to preserve their soul energy to refine elixirs and utensils later. It was indeed not easy. Su-yi could feel that the entire surrounding seawater was incomparably oppressive. A huge pressure surrounded him, and an extremely terrifying energy fluctuation spread around his body. It was as if a monstrous beast that had been lurking for many years was staring at him. It's really not ordinary. Su-yi instantly spread out the spiritual sense of the fourth level of the Origin Emperor realm. His heart instantly became extremely solemn. Many people had already reached 3,000 meters, and their brows were instantly furrowed. This sea of broken swords was really something. They had just entered, and they already felt such a pressure. If they went down further, they were afraid that ordinary people wouldn't be able to bear it. Tian Wu and Han Yuro's soul energy would also be consumed extremely quickly because they were carrying Li Shiran and Ah Chu. Brother Tian Chong, Ran Chu I'll take you to 5,000 meters first. You have to preserve your strength. Su-yi slightly gritted his teeth. Big brother Su, Li Shiran and Ah Chu's soul energy was being consumed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Facing the boundless darkness, the vast sea surged, and the surrounding space also seemed to be distorted. Listening to the whirring sound around him and the layers of seawater surrounding him, Su-yi slightly gritted his teeth and said, "Little White, I'll have to trouble you again." Suddenly, Su-yi's figure shook and retreated back. He closed his eyes and tried his best to adapt to the space in front of him. Forming a handprint in his palm, Su-yi spread the soul energy of the middle of the third level throughout the sea and felt the existence of the water attribute with all his strength. Suddenly, the light in his eyes burst out, and the water attribute around him condensed. His soul energy instantly spread out and instantly condensed into a white flood dragon's remnant soul that spanned 100 feet. White flood dragon god. Chapter 1647. Little White, we'll have to rely on you this time. Bring us to 5,000 meters. Su-yi sighed. Although he had only met the white flood dragon god a few times, he could still feel that this remnant soul that was beginning to materialize had a deep connection with him. The aura on its body was also very familiar. The white flood dragon god was already a little dispirited from the long journey and being attacked several times by Duanwu Xiaoman. Su-yi's heart ached for it. It was already extremely rare for Su-yi to be able to draw it out again. Right now, Su-yi was using his soul energy to communicate with the white flood dragon god. He stroked the white flood dragon's giant head, hoping that the white flood dragon god could understand and persevere to a deeper level. Roar! While Ah Chu and the rest were still in shock, Su-yi was instantly carried on the white flood dragon god's head. His posture was proud and majestic. At the same time, the white flood dragon god opened its bloody mouth. A huge black hole spread out with a terrifying force that could swallow all things. It sucked in a mouthful of seawater and spat it out with its long neck. Pong! A towering pillar of water sprayed out. A shocking roar that was like a dragon's roar reverberated throughout the broken sword sea. It was like the call of an undersea god. The spatial ripples in front of them were violently shaken. Under the mighty power of the sound wave, the space in front of them was shattered. How could a remnant soul, like the White Flood Dragon God, be afraid of soul pressure? The White Flood Dragon God carried Tian Wu and the others. The terrifying sound wave pushed away the seawater. The dragon's roar and the terrifying vortex's sound wave attacked each other. The spatial ripples in the seawater were like shattered mirrors. The White Flood Dragon God spread its wings and flapped with force. It shot forward like a cannonball. In the gap, the five of them rode the White Flood Dragon God and swam 5,000 meters. They began to condense their soul energy to conserve their strength. What fast speed! How can they be so fast? On the cliff, the elders who were watching the screen were all shocked. They were puzzled and said, "What's going on?" The people who had just stopped suddenly sped up again, and all five of them are moving at the same speed. Oh, the earth-shattering roar that rose from the bottom of the sea instantly filled the entire space. It was like a boundless wave that weaved a wall of water high up in the sky. Instantly, the void shattered inch by inch. The clouds dissipated, and the golden sun hung in the sky. Cheating. This kid is cheating. Some of the ordinary elders immediately realized what was going on. This is clearly the White Flood Dragon God's roar. This brat lured out the White Flood Dragon God and had it bring them to the bottom of the sea. Motherf asterisk cur, no way. Disqualify him. Cheating, cheating. Stop the competition. All the elders began to curse loudly. The surging tsunami was just like their current mood. They were all afraid that their own disciples would suffer a great loss. He also wanted to mess up the entire competition. Long Pasan looked at the elders and said, "What are you shouting for? Alchemy and artifact refining groups. Which of our elder vassals groups didn't send people to help you? The Soul Tamer himself didn't use the Soul Tamer technique to sneak in, so how can he blame others for being strong?" One of the elders stood up and said to Long Pasan, "Elder Long, your words are biased. If that's the case, then what is the point of competing? Let's compete to see who's stronger." Say that again for this daddy. Long Pasan didn't expect that someone would dare to criticize him. As the head of the imperial palace of the celestial dragon continent, he had always been a big brother among the elders. He had always been the one to say the least, and was in existence with supreme authority. Seeing that there was an ordinary elder who dared to challenge him, Long Pasan was furious. Just as he was about to rush up and argue, he was pulled back by the other elders. Duanmu Xiaoman gently waved her hand, indicating for everyone to shut up. She said, "If you can also lure out the White Flood Dragon God, then I don't care." The great guardian of the imperial palace was actually lured out by an outsider. Where is the face of you soul tamers? As soon as she said that, the eyes of the ordinary elders who were arguing with each other turned bloodshot. They gritted their teeth and didn't dare to get angry. Duanmu Xiaoman's words were clearly meant to protect Su Yi. Luo Wuya's expression turned serious. If it's refining pills or refining tools, it's fine if it's your team members who are soul tamers. As for the battle between soul tamers, there are no rules to speak of. In a Tianfeng battle, who wouldn't attack your weakness just because you're a soul tamer? All the elders were speechless, embarrassed to the extreme. On the Lingua Peak side, Elder Gyue, Han Wulong, Guanlan, Yin Ding, Yin Lu, and the others all had serious expressions. Han Wulong clenched his fists and roared in a low voice. "Go down, daughter, give face to the boundless sect and your father. Scare these old men to death." On the light screen, it could clearly be seen that the 5 light spots were diving down at the same speed. They were very coordinated. They quickly reached 1,000 meters and then 2,000 meters. At the bottom of the sea, the White Flood Dragon God slashed through the waves like a rocket. Su Yi, on the other hand, had already circulated the art of driving the heavens. His face was extremely serious as he quietly formed a series of complicated hand seals, not daring to be careless. Behind him, Tian Wu, Han Yuro, Ah Chu, and Li Shiran were constantly emitting bright soul light to resist the invasion of external forces and the leakage of their own soul suppression. Wisps of soul energy gathered on the light screen like white silk. At this moment, They could faintly see a faint, mysterious light surging in the distance. The white flood dragon god let out a low cry. Its wings stirred up wind, and it once again burst out with boundless power. It cut through the space waves and headed toward the light. Buzz! Buzz! Immediately, its entire body was wrapped in the light. It was extremely mysterious. After passing through the light, everyone could feel the soul pressure surging up once again. Oh, the white flood dragon god's body trembled violently. It once again let out an extremely shocking roar. It was like the echo of a giant whale, shaking one's soul. The entire netherworld of broken swords was filled with countless tiny specks of light. The incomparably heavy soul attack collapsed on everyone's body. 2,000 meters. Han Yuro shouted to Su Yi behind her. Soul attacks were the most powerful and thorough attacks to soul personages, martial artists, savage Yao beasts, and spiritual creatures. Even though the white flood dragon god was a remnant soul, it still felt very uncomfortable. It was obvious that after passing through the 2,000-meter barrier, the white flood dragon god's speed had begun to slow down. The surrounding space distorted even more. The terrifying sound waves and soul energies that filled the void rushed over, rampaging around them without restraint. Calm. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 1648. How are you guys? Can you still stand it? Su Yi was a little worried. When they reached 2,000 meters, the soul pressure around them had increased, but their souls had not been crushed too much. Instead, because they had adapted to the dangerous environment of Broken Sword Sea, everyone's soul energy began to recover. I'm not good, after Li Shiran replied. Her face was pale, her body trembled slightly, and her eyes began to become a little empty. Su Yi looked dignified. Among the 5 of them, only Li Shiran had a half-step heaven-rank soul, but the further down they went, the more obvious the gap between half-step heaven rank and heaven rank soul became. Her ability to withstand the pressure of the surrounding seawater, as well as the recovery ability of her soul energy, was not as good as Tian Ho's. Run the art of driving the heavens, converge your soul energy into your mind, and condense your hand seals. Tian Chang shouted, "Sister, hold on, we can do it." At this moment, Li Shiran could only sit on the white flood dragon god with her eyes closed. According to Tian Ho's instructions, the art of driving the heavens began to run, and at the same time, countless mystical lights filled her body. In the black tide, countless tiny water-attributed substances condensed around Li Shiran's body. The pinprick-sized water origin energy began to condense into ice, and blue ice crystals constantly swirled around Li Shiran's body. Suddenly, a terrible storm of energy swept out from her body, turning into a circle of light that wrapped around Li Shiran like a weapon. The ice circle was transparent, and the incomparably sharp ice crystals constantly shattered in the space, resisting the terrible energy sound waves. Looking at the hurricane-like soul attack that kept sweeping around Li Shiran, Tian Ho and the others were stunned. Whoosh whoosh. Achu looked at Li Shiran's messy hair in surprise and said, "The fog flower mirrors snow of the cloud shadow, frost steps. Sister is using our leaf family's fog flower mirror snow." In a moment of desperation, Li Shiran used all her martial skills and soul skills. The fog flower mirror snow was the first level of the cloud shadow, frost steps. Cloud shadow, treading frost steps, was a martial technique derived from the crimson water celestial crystal fragment. It could be used only by relying on a bit of Yuan Qi. It was mainly powered by soul force. Fusing the spatial laws and nature attribute, it was an extremely profound martial technique. Misty flower mirror snow was the first layer. It could hide a martial artist's aura and construct a small world of their own attributes. It could create an ice crystal path that was suitable for walking in a straight line. It was very convenient for short-distance battles. But what he didn't expect was that Mistress Jingxue could seriously weaken the Broken Sword Sea's all-pervasive and terrifying attacks. seeing Li Shiran's complexion gradually improve inside the ice crystal. Su Yi's mouth curved into a faint smile and said, "So that's how it is." Achu. Use the cloud shadow frost steps immediately. This place is rich in water attribute, so the cloud shadow frost steps is very suitable. Su Yi said loudly. Seeing this scene, everyone understood. It turned out that Li Shiran had made a lucky hit. She had used the cloud shadow frost steps, which was also a soul technique, to construct a layer of natural barrier, relieving a lot of pressure for herself. In this way, the invasion of the water pressure almost didn't exist. In addition, Misty Flower Mirror Snow was affected by the quality of her soul and her cultivation, which weakened the soul pressure. Li Shiran was much more comfortable inside the ice crystal barrier. Tian Wu, Han Yuro, and Achu nodded at the same time. Listening to Su Yi's advice, Achu instantly formed hand seals with both hands. A huge amount of soul pressure filled with water attribute energy spread out from her body and violently surged out from her body. Pung pung. Sitting on the ground, Achu's body was instantly covered in ice crystals. The world-shaking sonic boom of the water body was instantly reduced by a lot. With the disappearance of the water pressure, Achu's soul force also began to sharply decrease. It's useful, it's really useful. Big brother Su Yi. Achu shouted excitedly. Tian Wu, Yuro, you don't have the cloud shadow frost steps. Use any other methods that can resist the soul pressure or the water pressure. Leave the rest to me. I will send you there. Su Yi anxiously roared. Then, a huge icy blue waterfall shot out from Su Yi's hand like a python soaring into the sky. The surrounding water vapor was instantly pushed to the side, causing everyone to tremble in fear. Boom! More and more vortexes appeared around them. The white flood dragon god's huge body lightly shuttled back and forth in the dark space, dodging the countless sonic booms. Gradually, he saw another light. Turning around, he saw that Tian Wu, Han Yuro, and the others had all entered a meditative state. Divine light surged around them, and white lightning threads lingered around them like angry dragons. Clearly, they had reduced the consumption of their soul force to a minimum and were in a state of equilibrium. Looking at the 3,000-meter circle of light, Su Yi's heart sank. He muttered, "Little White, it's up to you and me now. Once we reach 4 or 5,000 meters, it will be time for them to shine. Little White, let's do it in one go." Su Yi's eyes narrowed. Then, a bright light flashed in his eyes. Su Yi revolved the Origin Supreme art to the limit. Space trembled, and soul force that covered the heavens and earth surged out, drawing upon the boundless and terrifying heaven and earth energy. Pung pung. In an instant, the entire sea became extremely resplendent. A blue waterfall condensed in his palm, tearing through space as it collided with the final vortex. The space in front of the palm shattered inch by inch, and the snow-white light around it exploded with a loud bang. 3,000 meters. We've arrived. Su Yi had already brought everyone to the 3,000 to 4,000 meter depth. At this point, the number of disciples in the Heavenly Command Palace had increased by a lot. Oh, this Jun Haoyan's soul force is indeed extraordinary. To be able to reach 5,000 meters with just his own strength, it's truly rare. Su Yi thought of Jun Haoyan's words before he entered the sea. In an unyielding battle, intent soared into the sky. However, you'll still lose. 15,000 meters? Su Yi sneered. The heaven-shaking sound was like the cry of a divine beast. The white flood dragon god's incomparably deep voice resounded through the entire circle. Countless light dots in the distance began to tremble, and some even began to swim back. Looks like most of the Heavenly Command Palace's disciples are around 3,000 to 4,000 meters. Su Yi's lips curled up slightly as he looked at the light dots nearby. Whoosh! In the next instant, Su Yi's soul force surged, and the heavenly origin B-soul was like a dazzling sun. In an instant, Su Yi's palm blasted out. The white flood dragon god's incomparably huge body retreated slightly, and it was already dozens of breaths away from the others. Eh, it's Sui. What's that behind him? I don't know. How can he be so fast? Calm. Wonderful book house. Chapter 1649. Holy shit, it's the White Flood Dragon God. This brat is cheating. I'm guessing that those who can reach the bottom will have to rely on all sorts of soul skills. This brat is too scheming. Let's see how he's going to reach the bottom. At the depth of 3,000 to 4,000 meters, there were already over 100 Command Palace disciples on both sides of the tall platforms. The disciples who were preparing to start refining pills and weapons saw the incomparably huge figures that were like divine beasts soaring into the sky. They couldn't help but tremble in their hearts as they saw the incomparably huge figures that were like divine beasts soaring into the sky. The boundless pressure coming from above was not on the same level as theirs. This aura naturally carried the domineering might of an emperor. The destructive aura of a king made all the Command Heavenly Palace disciples who were refining pills at the depth of 3 to 4,000 meters feel the urge to submit. No, I feel that my soul pressure is a bit uncomfortable. A Command Heavenly Palace disciple kept on complaining. Yeah, this brat is really smart. The Command Heavenly Soul competition should rely on one's own strength. The Command Heavenly Palace disciples who could only refine tools were furious as they watched Sui swim away. In the vast broken sword sea, one could see a deep trench in space like a boat. The incomparably dark surroundings were filled with the corrosion of the soul pressure. Sui, who was standing on the white Jiao god's back, had a pair of bright eyes. He looked at the descending depth and said in his heart, "Little White, hold on a little longer. We're almost at 4,000 meters and 5,000 meters." Sui also understood that 5,000 meters was the White Flood Dragon God's limit. Any deeper, and it would be very likely that the White Flood Dragon God's soul would scatter. Roar! Terrifying whirlpools constantly rushed out from both sides, as if they wanted to swallow everyone alive. Suddenly, two demonic beasts bearing their fangs and brandishing their claws rushed out from the whirlpools. A few phantoms flashed in the air, and in an instant, the entire space was filled with a repulsive force that engulfed the entire area. The immense soul pressure was like an ancient mountain that had collapsed, and all of it pressed down on Sui. Bang! One could only hear Sui's bones exploding as his joints moved slightly. Golden dragon patterns began to appear and enveloped Sui's body like a divine light with a mighty aura. Is it a sea demon? Sui's heart sank. This place was less than 4,000 meters deep, so how could there be sea demon beasts here? Roar! Sui's eyes widened as he subconsciously roared in his heart. Two fiery dragons like lightning shot out from his palms and collided with the demonic beasts in the darkness. Bang! Two piercingly cold silhouettes flashed past. Sui focused his eyes and saw that they were the remnant souls of two blood-toothed mad shark beasts. They were incomparably cold and gleaming with cold light. After being hit by Sui's fire dragon, it retreated rapidly. Near the boundless sea of broken swords, it spat out a scarlet aura and kept staring at Sui. It roared in a low voice, ready to swallow Sui alive at any time. At the same time, Sui could sense spatial ripples flashing in the air around him. Then, more than a dozen figures appeared at the same time. Suddenly, the energy in the world began to condense into soul energy. Their killing intent was awe-inspiring. More than a dozen gazes like sharp blades stared at Sui, and here I was wondering who it was. "We meet again." Sui sneered. It turned out that the people who had come were none other than the disciples of Heavenly Command Palace that he had just angrily insulted. Now that he had reached the distance of 3 to 4,000 meters, they actually turned back to meet him and brought two other teams with them. "Running back to die? Are you tired of living?" Sui shouted angrily. At this moment, under Sui's seemingly casual gaze, the soul energy around him instantly reached its peak, covering the sky and covering the earth, completely sealing off the few of them. Don't be so arrogant. Sui, you'll stop here today. In an instant, the dozen or so Imperial Celestial Palace disciples were riled up by Su Yi's provocation. Instantly, the seawater at the bottom of the Broken Sword Sea began to surge. The pressure of the turbulent seawater combined with the pressure of everyone's soul created an extremely terrifying force. The whirlpool could be heard everywhere, causing the entire space to tremble. Pump! More than 10 Imperial Celestial Palace disciples acted at the same time, waving their hands abruptly. Their hand seals changed, and a vast wave of energy began to spread from their palms. Following this wave of energy that gathered more than 10 people, the spatial pressure of the entire 3 to 4,000 meter radius was instantly disrupted. Several consecutive sonic booms rang out, and the attacks were like water cannonballs exploding around them. The entire Broken Sword Sea was like a huge wave, and everyone's mind was shaken. Dang, dang, dang. The disciples of Command Heavenly Palace all retreated a dozen steps, and Su Yi sighed, even though he had grabbed onto the wings of the white flood dragon god. He still took 2 steps back. His heart couldn't help but turn heavy. The disciples of Command Heavenly Palace in front of him were all at the early or middle stage of the 3rd rank, and only one of them was at the advanced stage of the 3rd rank. They couldn't be considered strong, and the quality of their souls was at most half a step into the heavenly rank. They were completely a motley crew. Seeing the joint attack of the disciples of Command Heavenly Palace, Su Yi's eyes instantly became sharp, and a killing intent shot out from within. He secretly analyzed in his heart. The reason why he was able to produce such a powerful soul energy was because he had gathered everyone's soul energy. This was definitely a terrifying energy. Immersed in soul cultivation for many years, their soul energy was incomparably condensed. Compared to him, they were completely relying on their soul talent to survive and didn't even have any soul skills. This was the real reason why Su Yi wanted Duanmu Xiaoman to guide him. This trip to Command Heavenly Palace was to raise his soul energy and train his soul cultivation, so that he could participate in the Heavenly Wind ranking tournament. This was the most important reason for Su Yi, other than visiting the Su family. Su Yi, did you have a good time talking up there? The disciples of Command Heavenly Palace glared at Su Yi, and their hearts were filled with hatred, but their mouths were filled with sinister smiles. Don't think that with Gyue and Palace Lord protecting you, you can do whatever you want. This is the bottom of the Broken Sword Sea. No one will know even if I kill you. Yes, we might not be able to reach 7,000 meters, but you might not be able to swim either. No, you definitely won't be able to swim there. Ha ha ha. The disciples of Command Heavenly Palace trembled in fear. They knew that today's Command Heavenly Soul competition was different from the previous years. It was the best of the best, and not the average. Therefore, these disciples of Command Heavenly Palace naturally gave up on the Command Heavenly Soul competition. Living in the Arch-K Lake, they had always looked up to the direct disciples of Command Heavenly Palace. They originally thought that with most of the direct disciples eliminated, they would have a chance. But because of the change in the rules, all of their efforts became illusions. In the end, this Command Heavenly Soul competition was a contest between Jun Haoyin and Su Yi, and had nothing to do with them. Chapter 1650. Jealousy, humiliation, and resentment made them want to stop Su, even if they didn't participate in the soul-controlling competition. Are you guys trying to be rat shit? Killing intent surged in Su Yi's eyes. Su Yi scoffed at this kind of stupid behavior that harmed others without benefiting themselves. Rat shit? That's because you've never experienced the despair of not being able to fight. Su Yi, you'll pay for everything you've done. Today, you'll be buried here. Su Yi's heart shuddered. These people were fighting with all their might, but they still had some tricks up their sleeves. The key was that he only had a heaven-defying spiritual energy. They were all spirit controllers, but he didn't even have half of their spirit skills. Boom, boom, boom. Spent force. Su You go to hell. Little bastard. Dozens of figures instantly dispersed. In a short moment, a vast spiritual energy fluctuation began to spread from everyone's body. A terrifying soul energy converged and instantly merged with the seawater. Waves surged violently, and a black cylindrical vortex appeared out of thin air, twisting endlessly like a black python. The boundless soul energy collapsed and caused the space to tremble uncontrollably. The gathering of such a huge amount of spiritual energy instantly caused the space around Broken Sword Sea to shatter inch by inch. The surrounding seawater was like powder as it rapidly shot to the sides. Wherever the majestic black tornado passed, a terrifying energy fluctuation spread out from it. It rushed towards Su-Yi with bared fangs and brandished claws. Su-Yi, even if I had to choose one person, it would still be Jun Hao-Yin. You outsider, go to hell. Jie. Dozens of Heavenly Command Palace disciples seemed to have a common enemy. They shouted coldly, and their killing intent soared to the sky. Dozens of figures followed the attack of the water vortex. The water vortex reached Su-Yi's head in a flash. It looked like Su-Yi was about to be crushed by the vortex. Su-Yi turned back to look at the four people who were still focused. He clenched his teeth and roared fiercely. Get lost. Above the high cliff, the seawater and the wind blew. The rolling dark clouds in the sky were obscure and bleak. They stared at the people on the light screen with grave expressions. Ling Yefeng's expression was getting uglier and uglier. Han Wulong, who was standing with his hands clasped behind his back, seemed to have sensed that something was wrong. He immediately released a monstrous energy, and his fiery aura soared to the sky as he pointed at the light screen. Su-Yi's light spot was not only stagnant, but it was also surrounded by more than a dozen new light spots. What happened? Why were Su-Yi and the others surrounded? F***ck her. Who's blocking my daughter? Amidst the silence, Han Wulong's sudden outburst had indeed made everyone present feel a suffocating pressure. Even the surrounding air had begun to solidify, and a monstrous killing intent had swept through the air. The ordinary elders who had looked a little strange just now retreated slightly. Long Pasan and Luo Wuya's faces were also extremely solemn, and they did not say a word. Bang! Duanmu Xiaoman, who was standing at the front, suddenly sighed. She gently lifted her white long sleeve, and a pair of deep, watery eyes easily obliterated Han Wulong's oppressive aura in the void. There was no trace of water, and everything returned to calm. There was not even a ripple. Why don't you try shouting again? Duanmu Xiaoman's casual words indeed concealed a terrifying killing intent. Instantly, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Looks like Palace Head Duanmu was truly enraged. Han Wulong frowned. He knew that Duanmu Xiaoman was not to be trifled with. He immediately cupped his hands. The killing intent in his tiger eyes was awe-inspiring as he stared at the ordinary elders in the distance. If it was not their idea, who would have the guts to attack Su-Yi and the others? Su-Yi had a bet with the palace master. Han Yuro was Han Wulong's daughter, and the other three were under Elder Gyue. How could ordinary disciples have the guts to provoke them? Palace Master Duanmu, I, Han Wulong, am not the one causing trouble. Look, Su-Yi and the others are being surrounded. Han Wulong said. Shua. Immediately, on the light screen, Su-Yi's position was instantly stared at by all the elders. Gyue, Guanlan, and the others frowned and their faces darkened. Speak. Was it you bastards who instigated this? Han Wulong, don't slander us. The faces of the ordinary elders of the Imperial Palace instantly turned red. Their eyes seemed to be looking at Palace Master Duanmu, afraid that Duanmu Xiaoman would suddenly explode. Duanmu Xiaoman leisurely turned around and looked at Han Wulong. Only Su-Yi is allowed to crush others, but others are not allowed to gang up on him? Palace Master Duanmu, what do you mean by this? Han Wulong's face gradually darkened. The experts of the immeasurable sect behind him burst out with energy and stepped forward, their killing intent awe-inspiring. Duanmu Xiaoman's cold eyes flashed with a trace of coldness. She lightly opened her cherry lips and said, "If Su-yi can't even pass such a small challenge, what's the use of keeping such a person?" "That's right. It's a chaotic battle to begin with. Han Wulong, don't only protect people from your own family. Does the immeasurable sect like to fight one-on-one? If you think the Imperial Soul competition is child's play, then go home early. Don't embarrass yourself here." When the ordinary elders of the Archfault Lake heard Duanmu Xiaomon's words, they immediately became arrogant and ridiculed Han Wulong in all sorts of ways. The energy around Han Wulong's body instantly surged. Boundless killing intent surged towards the disciples of the Imperial Soul Palace. Instantly, the disciples of the Imperial Soul Palace raised their eyebrows and swallowed a mouthful of saliva. The corner of Han Wulong's mouth twitched slightly. His eyes were filled with disdain as he softly said, "Trash." Then, Han Wulong walked to the side of Elder Gyue and whispered, "Senior Gyue, what should we do?" Gyue, Long Pasan, Luo Wuya, and the others suddenly looked up at the light spot in the sky. Their hearts hardened as they said, "Believe in Su-yi." Gyue, Luo Wuya, Long Pasan, come here. Duanmu Xiaoman floated in the air at the edge of the cliff. Boundless soul pressure instantly began to tremble. There was a crisp sound in the air as the space was instantly torn apart. Boom! A thunderous sound resounded. A tear-shaped space crack instantly appeared. Duanmu Xiaoman's beautiful hair fluttered as she spoke to the three of them. "I will leave everything here to you. You can handle everything properly." Then, Duanmu Xiaoman looked at the depths of the sea. There was a faint, intense energy fluctuation. Her eyes froze. Before she left, she sent a message to Gyue. "The Broken Sword Sea is not normal. I will go 20,000 meters first. Gyue, you are the leader." So, a desolate spatial fluctuation condensed. Under the sharp aura, everyone's heart palpitated for no reason. As the beautiful figure dissipated, Long Pasan said to Gyue, "What did the palace lord say to you?" Chapter 1651. Gyue rubbed his chin and turned his attention back to the screen. His eyes were filled with solemnity. "Since the palace master is not here, we will use the palace master's jade token as the focal point. Everyone, keep a close eye on every inch of the screen to ensure that the Imperial Soul race goes on as planned." Gyue ordered. Then, he took Han Wulong back and said in a low voice, "Sect Master Han, don't worry. He won't be taken care of by these small fries. Let's wait and see." Han Wulong nodded slightly, recalling the words spoken by the few ordinary elders, and said in a ruthless tone, "Elder Gyue, I'll listen to you. If those trash continue to speak and Palace Master Duanmu is not here, I, Han Wulong, will immediately kill them." At this time, Long Pasan, Luo Wuya, and a group of elders came to Gyue's side with a serious expression. "Sect Master Han, please calm down. What happened? Why did Palace Master Duanmu suddenly leave?" Gyue shook his head and thought about how Jun Haoyan was the disciple who had dived the deepest. He said, "Palace Master went to 20,000 meters first. It seems that something strange happened at 20,000 meters. Is Jun Haoyan okay?" On the screen, Jun Haoyan had already dived to a depth of 8,000 meters and was going down at an extraordinary speed, leaving all the light spots behind him far behind. Haoyan is still going. He's still in first place. Most of the alchemy and refining items are gathered at 3,000 to 4,000 meters, which is to be expected. But most of the Imperial Soul Race disciples are still stuck at 5,000 to 6,000 meters. It's a bit strange. Luo Wuya looked at Gyue, stroked his beard, and asked doubtfully, "There's no problem with the ranking, but the speed and depth of the Imperial Soul Race disciples are a bit strange." Long Pashan's eyes flashed with a strange light. "What's wrong, Elder Long?" Hearing this, Han Wulong was a bit surprised. His tall and sturdy body swayed, as if he also felt something strange at the bottom of the sea. "I can't say for sure, but other than refining souls and refining items, the disciples of Command Celestial Palace shouldn't be only 5 or 6,000 meters away right now." Long Pasan waved his sleeve, and his weathered face trembled. "This!" Han Wulong frowned and flew to the light screen again. He stopped and looked at it carefully. Under the sea breeze, the light screen swayed back and forth in the sky like a piece of paper. Han Wulong studied the situation of the soul riding competition in front of him, then turned back and said to everyone, "Yes, it was just as Elder Long had said. Most of the people who control souls are only between 5 to 6,000 meters." As everyone knew, the amount of soul energy required for soul control was several times that of alchemy and equipment forging. Therefore, the depth of the broken sword sea should be several times that of alchemy and equipment forging. 1 to 7,000 meters was the range for refining pills and weapons. Most people gathered at 3 to 5,000 meters, so there was nothing out of the ordinary. However, the rules of the soul riding competition stated that 7,000 meters was the range for the soul control battle. This was a bit strange. There are many direct disciples of our command, Celestial Palace, who went down. Could it be that they can only swim 5 or 6,000 meters? Not even 7,000 meters? Guyue was a bit puzzled. With this question in mind, all of the elders and teaching elders began to gather their soul energy and prepare. It seems that the Palace Lord was right. This is not normal. Everyone get ready. Wait for the Palace Lord's order. Guyue ordered. Yes. All of the elders had serious expressions. They could already smell a trace of a bad signal in the air. Broken Sword Sea, 3 to 4,000 meters away. Bang, bang, bang. Sweet and fishy seawater constantly surged around. The continuous underwater explosions caused the command Celestial Palace disciples on both sides of the stage to be shocked. More than 10 people were besieging a white flood dragon. He was awe-inspiring on top of it. His soul aura covered the sky and earth as it swept over. It was a vast and mighty aura that caused the coral stones on the seabed to instantly shatter. This kind of shocking power couldn't be described with words. This Sui is too strong. I didn't see him use any soul skills, but he actually fought dozens of rounds with those people and had the upper hand. A command Celestial Palace disciple muttered softly, looking up from time to time. "Don't look. Hurry up and refine pills." "Who is Sui? Who are you? Don't meddle in other people's business." A command Celestial Palace disciple reprimanded his colleague beside him. Oh, the white flood dragon god's remnant soul was snow white. It was almost materialized as it spat out huge sonic attacks in the air. The violent ripples of energy rippled crazily as if they were real. Following the huge impact of the terrifying whirlpool, the destructive power of the broken sword sea caused fear in the hearts of the command Celestial Palace disciples. They couldn't help but stagger. Not good. The command Celestial Palace disciples raised their heads, but they only saw the white flood dragon god's enormous body in the air. It was like a heavy cannon that pressed down on the bodies of the command Celestial Palace disciples. Suddenly, the soul aura around the command Celestial Palace disciples shattered like a piece of paper. The earth-shattering aura and the white flood dragon god's enormous tail directly crushed all the rocks in the sea from 3 to 4,000 meters away. A huge sound rang out, and sand and stones filled the air. It was as if mountains and rivers had been overturned. The command Celestial Palace disciples were locked in place by the terrifying aura. They couldn't move, and the spiritual energy that was crushing on their bodies was instantly sucked in by the terrifying whirlpool. Don't be too happy. We're only the first batch. There's still a large group of people behind, all waiting to catch you. You want to show off in our command, Celestial Palace? No way. My leg. Let go of me, dragon. You bastard, you'll die a horrible death. Using our command, Celestial Palace's mountain guardian god against us. Before he finished speaking, several fire dragon-like bolts had already formed in Suyi's hands. They directly struck the command Celestial Palace disciples, causing them to cry out in pain. The pill refiners below were all shocked. They all lowered their heads, not daring to say anything. They didn't want to watch anymore. Bang, bang. The Origin Supreme technique in his body circulated again. The peerless command celestial art also instantly filled the entire circle. Everyone in the circle had already witnessed the scene of Su-Yi instantly killing everyone. They couldn't help but suck in a cold breath. Su-Yi's body was surrounded by a violent and terrifying fire attribute energy storm. His body directly pounced out like a stream of light, instantly breaking through the air and arriving beside the command Celestial Palace disciples. In an instant, the blood-toothed shark that the command Celestial Palace disciples had drawn out had already turned into specks of light and dissipated. In the distance, Su-Yi's gaze slightly fluctuated, revealing a trace of seriousness. Chapter 1652. Over 10 disciples of Command Palace cried out while holding their heads. How could they dare to speak? All of them panted heavily while revealing terror in their eyes. Who exactly ordered all of you to do this? Speak. Why did you ambush me? Su-Yi gazed coldly at all of them who were already terrified out of their wits. No one ordered us to do this. If you want to blame someone, then blame yourself for showing off too much. You provoked everyone into telling us not to go down as soon as we entered the sea and to stay in the various circles to ambush you. This way, it would be easier for everyone to report back. What benefits does ambushing me bring to all of you? Su-Yi's eyes surged with a cold light that carried a trace of surprise. And a fellow that doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Command Palace only has Junhao-yen. If you were to obtain first, then where would Command Palace put its face? If Gyue and the others were allowed to continue gaining power, then Command Palace would only be replaced by Elder Wang, and it wouldn't benefit us at all. At the very least, we would be able to obtain some benefits if Zhuoqiufeng were to take charge. Since Gyue has taken charge, then mediocre people like us can only leave Command Palace. Junhao-yen should already be 8,000 meters away at this moment, and you'll never be able to catch up to him. One of the disciples of Command Palace laughed hysterically as he looked at Su-Yi while adding insult to injury. Su-Yi couldn't help but shake his head while feeling extreme disdain in his heart. This is the stupidity of a frog at the bottom of a well. Instead of thinking about strengthening yourself, you're spoiling the matters of others. Command Palace is only looked down upon by the Holy Mountain because of people like you. The current Command Palace doesn't just have Zhuoqiufeng. It has to be cleansed from top to bottom. Even ordinary disciples have started to lose their conscience. But with a quick thought, a trace of seriousness instantly flashed in Su-Yi's deep eyes. It was normal for Junhao-yen to charge forward ferociously if he wanted to show off. But could it be that those personal disciples didn't want to show off as well? Would they destroy their own Rain Soul competition for the sake of paving the way for Junhao-yen? Someone is definitely lying. These disciples of Command Palace on the outermost layer are at most hired thugs. It's fine if it's a frog at the bottom of a well, but could it be that everyone is a frog at the bottom of a well? These words must be taught to these idiots. Su-Yi thought to himself, impossible, there must be a problem. Su-Yi knew that he wouldn't be able to get anything out of these Command Celestial Palace disciples, so he didn't waste any more time. His gaze immediately darkened. Bang! Another wave of primitive Emperor Qi shot out from his hand, knocking out more than a dozen disciples on the spot. Su-Yi climbed back onto the white flood dragon god's body, his eyes full of seriousness. After more than 10 breaths, Su-Yi brought the four to the 4-kilometer and 5-kilometer areas. Here, the high ground on both sides had mysterious rank pills and weapons. Many disciples had already begun their training. As soon as they reached this area, Su-Yi felt a monstrous force that caused his skin to hurt. The surrounding water pressure from the terrifying whirlpool also revealed a strange aura, directly condensing the ripples in space. When the water vapor passed through the whirlpool, it seemed to disappear without a trace. It was very strange. Su-Yi turned around and immediately woke up Li Shiran, Tianwu, and the others. When they saw that they had reached the 4-kilometer and 5-kilometer areas, they couldn't help but be overjoyed. Big Brother Su, so fast. We've reached the place. We can start refining pills soon. Li Sure ran, and Ah Chu's eyes were full of joy. He waved his hand and had the white flood dragon god lower its voice as much as possible. It quickly moved around the area quietly, trying not to make too much noise in the dark sea. Little White, hold on a little longer. We'll reach the place soon. Oh, the white flood dragon god let out a low cry, as if to tell Sui that it couldn't hold on for much longer. Little White, what's wrong with him? Hanyuro looked at Sui with a serious expression. Sui looked at everyone with a solemn expression. He told them everything that had happened while they were meditating, as well as his own analysis. Everyone was furious. These people are really stupid. Is Jun Haoyan a good person? Achu was a little angry. Han Yuro and Tian Wu frowned. After pondering for a while, they said, no matter how Jun Haoyan is, there must be a problem. So they are willing to not go down and intercept Sui here. Otherwise, do you think they are really so kind? To work for Jun Haoyan? Tian Chong nodded and said, that's right. Whether it's Wuqiu Feng or our master, it has nothing to do with them. They just don't want to bear the reputation of running away from the battle. If they can't even reach 7 kilometers, wouldn't it be a big joke if this spread out? Li Shiran and Achu understood at this time and said, so, Big Brother Sui is just a cover. Ambushing Sui is to cover up the fact that they can't go 7 kilometers or reach the front. No matter what, we'll reach the place where we can refine pills soon. You guys refine the 9-turn dragon scale grass and the mysterious grade weapon first. Leave the rest to me. Have you all recovered? The pressure from 4 kilometers to 5 kilometers was even more terrifying than the previous layers. However, in Sui's eyes, Li Shiran and Achu's soul energy seemed to be more stable and condensed. There was no sign of weakening at all. He couldn't help but feel a little strange. Achu said to Sui, Big Brother Sui, we are fine. According to our Li family's method, we can get close to the surrounding water attribute very well. The water pressure is not a problem at all, but if we go down one more layer, I'm afraid the soul pressure won't be able to hold on. Good. In a while, Yuro and Tianwu, you guys protect Li Shiran and Achu. Sui originally thought that if the riding Heavenly Soul competition was normal, he would be safe and sound. He could just cultivate his own elixirs. Now it seemed that this was an extravagant hope. Big Brother Sui, you have to be careful when you go down, Li Shiran said softly. As soon as her voice fell, the speed of the white flood dragon god continued to accelerate. In the black tide that was like an eternal night, several people cut through the sea like streamers and went directly to the circle of light. Sui looked at the faintly discernible sea of broken swords below. His whole body was like duckweed, and the strength that was constantly sweeping in the air was constantly dissipating. Between the broken space ripples, the pitch-black vortex constantly whimpered in his ears. The demon soul of Tian Yuan seemed to be responding, and suddenly a bloody qi rushed to his heart. The deeper we go, the more the soul pressure in the vortex can interfere with people's hearts. The pressure is also getting more and more powerful. Sui thought in his heart, and at the same time reminded Tian Wu and others to guard their minds. Bang! In an instant, there was an explosion under the white flood dragon god's body. Suddenly, its body became a little staggered. Everyone's body collapsed, and they could feel that the white flood dragon god's abdomen had been hit hard. Chapter 1653. The sudden loss of balance caused everyone to turn pale with fright. Sui immediately released his soul pressure, stabilizing his body and the white flood dragon god at the same time. Whoosh! Using his spiritual sense to probe, his sharp eyebrows drooped, and the soul energy around him was as sharp as tentacles. In the blink of an eye, he could sense an extremely terrifying giant soul remnant nearby. Who is it? Get out here! Sui spoke harshly, a strong killing intent surging out. The newcomer wore a white robe and was followed by 4 people. His eyes were filled with shock as he looked at Sui. Very good, Sui. I thought you would be slower than I expected. It seems I still underestimated you. Those useless hearts in front. Senior Brother Zifeng told us to block Su Yi outside. He's not allowed to go below 7,000 meters. Senior Brother, don't waste words with him. Hurry up and kill him. That way, we can fulfill Senior Brother Zifeng's promise. It turned out that the person in front of him was also a disciple of Heavenly Palace. The attack just now also came from one of these disciples. Zifeng, is he very powerful? This was the first time Su Yi had heard this name. Suddenly, Tian Chang's eyes flashed with killing intent as he whispered to Su Yi. Zifeng is the #1 disciple of Archk Lake. His cultivation has already surpassed most of the direct disciples. He has always wanted to achieve something in the Driver Soul competition, but I didn't expect him to be the one behind it. But he can't go below 7,000 meters? Tian Chang's eyes were filled with confusion. Hearing this, countless thoughts arose in Su Yi's mind. It seemed that the road ahead would be very difficult. Not only would there be the corrosion of soul pressure, there would also be countless obstacles. Before he could fulfill his promise with Jun Haoyan and Duanmu Xiaoman, he would first have to defeat these disciples of Heavenly Palace. Then, Su Yi sneered, killing intent rising in his heart. Humph, I don't hate villains the most, but they're dogs. Don't be so arrogant, Su Yi, you little bastard. The leader of the Heavenly Palace disciples' souls surged as he called out from all directions. Instantly, 3 teams appeared from the back, left, and right. There were 4 teams in total, and all of them were soul controllers participating in the soul battle. They were all here to stop Su Yi. Behind each of them was an extremely terrifying remnant soul shadow. In an instant, they surrounded Su Yi and the others on the white flood dragon god. What do you want? Tian Chang asked coldly. Tian, the Heavenly Palace disciple from before. If you want to refine, you'll have to pass us. The Heavenly Palace disciple from before? Tian Chang abruptly raised his head. Instantly, the soul energy of the Imperial Celestial Palace disciples spread out and surrounded Tian Chang and the others. And you want to attack your own brothers? Have you gone mad? Tian Chang was furious. Looking at the high ground on both sides, some of the Heavenly Palace disciples who were focused on refining pills and refining tools were oblivious to what was happening above them. Tian Chang's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Who ordered these people to do this? They actually dare to start a chaotic battle here. How audacious! Tian Ho roared angrily. Cold laughter rang out as the disciples of the command Heavenly Palace lured out dozens of savage remnant souls. The remnant souls' energy formed a huge energy vortex around them. Within the vortex, a huge pressure that could shake the heavens and earth spread out. In that instant, Su Yi commanded the white flood dragon god to tear a hole in the soul remnant array that was like an inescapable net. He turned into a white blur and charged out of the gap. Bang! Su Yi clenched his fists, and his water attribute energy soared into the sky. The entire broken sword ocean ring shook violently, as if there was an earthquake. The terrifying energy exploded, and the ice crystals were like dragons. The unstoppable and terrifying water attribute energy directly froze the demonic beasts that were pouncing over. At the same time, it fiercely flew towards the Imperial Celestial Palace disciples. Chi-Chi. The aqua-blue ice crystals extended for more than 100 feet in the dark broken sword sea before they finally stopped their attack. The huge space cracks in the sea cracked inch by inch, and then they sank together with the floating seaweed. Through the light of the ice crystals, the true appearance of the dozens of remnant souls could be seen clearly. They were iron-armored rhinoceroses with fierce eyes. Their huge iron hooves were like pillars that stomped on the entire broken sword sea. Unexpectedly, Su Yi actually tore apart the soul formation's encirclement and even dealt a fierce blow to the remnant soul. Heavenly Command Palace's disciples shouted in unison, Su Yi, you're courting death. The 20 people of the 4 teams changed their hand signs at the same time. With a light shout, the dark blue soul energy whirlpool behind them burst out. Tens of ferocious iron light water rhinoceroses, who had been roaring endlessly, abruptly stomped on the ground with their iron hooves, causing the entire ocean to surge out like an earthquake, fiercely sweeping towards Su Yi's direction. So. The monstrous power soared to the sky and brought countless water arrows with it. The blood-toothed shark just now was not on the same level as the iron-armored water rhinoceroses in front of them. Dozens of iron-skinned rhinoceroses were dark blue in color, and they roared. The giant horns on their heads were like heaven-piercing divine weapons, and their steel-like scales covered their bodies. Their huge bodies quickly closed in from all directions, causing the situation under the sea of broken swords to tremble and crack. Roar! Terrifying energy swept out again. The Heavenly Palace disciples urged their soul energy at the same time. The iron-armored water rhinoceroses let out a lulu-lulu sound in the water, then turned into a black shadow in the air. When they reappeared, they were already in front of Su Yi. The giant arrow-like iron horns once again surrounded Su Yi's white Jiao god. Suddenly, countless tens of meters wide space ripples appeared around Su Yi's body, spreading out at a speed visible to the naked eye. So fast. How can this big guy be so fast? Su Yi muttered to himself. He didn't expect that the iron-armored water rhinoceros's remnant soul, with such a cumbersome appearance, would rush over like lightning. Tian Wu and Han Yuro also didn't show any weakness. At the same time, two waterfalls shot out from their hands. The waterfalls were like dragons, carrying a majestic soul attack as they swept out and collided with the iron-armored water rhinoceros's scales. Dong dong. Suddenly, huge waves were set off around the original spot. But only a dull sound could be heard, and the iron-armored water rhinoceros's remnant soul didn't show any signs of slowing down. Han Yuro's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. Her attack, just now, was like hitting a black iron rock. There was no reaction at all. Isn't this guy a remnant soul? Why is its physical strength so strong? Iron-armored water rhinoceros, the descendant of a great demon. Every remnant soul in front of us should be at the 8th level of the demon void realm. There's no need to think about their strength when they were alive. Every one of them is like a heavy armored tank. Chapter 1654. Su Yi calmly looked at the dozens of water rhinoceros remnant souls that were about to arrive. The 20 Heavenly Command Palace disciples in front of him were all at the high 3rd grade. This kind of lineup was already so difficult. Going down would definitely be even more difficult. The Heavenly Command Palace disciples that were constantly rushing up, and the Broken Sword Sea that was gradually increasing the pressure. Su Yi felt a sense of danger. Su Yi knew that going down was not as simple as comparing who could swim deeper. Pung pung. Dozens of iron light water rhinoceros bared their fangs and brandished their claws. Step by step, it was very rhythmic like a war chariot as it advanced toward Su Yi. An incomparably ferocious strength accompanied by a huge force tore through the seawater and then rushed towards the white flood dragon god in the center. Roar, roar! A shocking roar erupted from its mouth and transmitted through the crack. Tian Ho and the others' vision suddenly blurred and their minds were shaken. This big guy can also use sound wave attacks. Li Shiran and Chu both staggered back several steps. The pressure on their souls had clearly exceeded what they could bear. Let's end this quickly and eliminate these people and remnant souls. Let them start the competition as soon as possible. Su Yi thought in his heart. At the same time, Su Yi's expression was solemn. He did not retreat, but instead advanced. His hands formed strange seals, and countless extremely mysterious Yuan Qi light streaked across his body. Hu, the art of controlling the heavens, circulated like the wind. Just when it seemed like it was about to be trampled into meat paste by the water rhinoceros remnant soul, the entire white flood dragon god's monstrous strength surged. It jumped up like a spring and then jumped forward, once again dodging the fatal attack of the water rhinoceros remnant soul formation. Pong! White light flashed. The moment it jumped out, the white flood dragon god swung its long neck back. In the air, a sweeping soul pressure energy instantly gathered and formed the shape of a cannonball that directly hit the iron armor formation. The huge sound wave cannonball attack was like a heavy hammer, ruthlessly smashing into the iron armor. Countless iron armor sound waves suddenly dissipated like water bubbles. White light filled the sky and golden spears clashed. The remnant soul of the iron-armored water rhinoceros was instantly crushed by the monstrous power. The layers within the circle shook like mountains. The Juqian Palace disciples behind him all changed their expressions. They formed hand seals to stabilize the formation. Some of the weaker cultivators even staggered as blood spurted from their mouths. In an instant, they were slapped into the air by the white flood dragon god's sudden attack, crashing into the high ground on both sides. Their eyes were filled with shock. Everyone looked up. Eyes, the white flood dragon god's remnant soul aura, one red and one white, large and small, in the spatial ripples that could be seen with the naked eye, were constantly refracting mystical light. What's going on? How did his body suddenly jump out of the remnant soul demon array with a white flood dragon god? Hanyuro was shocked. She didn't understand what was going on. Tianho's eyes flashed with disbelief. He looked at Su Yi and could feel that Su Yi's soul aura had suddenly become extremely powerful. It was as if he had merged with the white flood dragon god. The result was that Su Yi's soul aura was instantly strengthened. The materialized white flood dragon god soul was also much stronger than before. It was as if it hadn't been consumed at all. What is Su Yi doing? Hanyuro cried out in shock. Tianho knew how powerful this was. He immediately made a shushing gesture, indicating for them to stop talking. The white flood dragon god emitted a dazzling soul aura. Then, the remnant soul began to shrink. Awu, accompanied by an ear-piercing dragon cry that rushed into the sky, the sea water shook. The entire 5-kilometer circle of broken sword sea shook as if there was an earthquake. Tianho, Hanyuro, and the others quickly jumped off the white flood dragon god's body and retreated. They stared blankly at Su Yi's strange transformation. On both sides of the high platforms, the disciples of Heavenly Palace were cultivating. They looked at the changes above their heads with ferocious expressions. They actually forgot about the pills they were refining. However, the invincible Su Yi seemed to have been prepared. At this moment, his entire body was enveloped by an extremely strange soul aura. The Tian Yuan demon soul was already like a small sun. It emitted an extremely terrifying radiance. It was filled with a terrifying soul aura. It was like an iron bucket that surrounded Su Yi. Tian Yuan demon soul, the white flood dragon god's power is mine. Su Yi roared in his heart. Su Yi had been at a disadvantage in terms of soul skills when he was in the 4-kilometer circle. He knew that he didn't have many soul skills. At that time, he had relied on his spiritual strength and the white flood dragon god's heroic performance to break out of the encirclement. During the process, Su Yi had been thinking about what soul skills he had. Which ones could he use in the upcoming competition? The first one that came to mind was the art of heavenly manipulation. This was a soul skill that cultivated spiritual energy. Any soul controller could condense a remnant soul and use their own strength to summon a demon or a martial artist with a remnant soul. This could be said to be the soul skill that Su Yi had grasped and used the most frequently. It could be said that it was a basic skill. Apart from this, the willpower that he comprehended through the nameless remnant sword art was also related to spiritual energy. When it was used on weapons like sabers and swords, it could produce an extremely terrifying attack. Next, the killing intent of the broken sword, the 10,000 demon god refining array, the blood phoenix, split the heavens, and the phantom spirit world were extremely powerful. However, they couldn't be used in this place. They were soul skills that consumed a lot of spiritual energy. The gains didn't make up for the losses. They couldn't be used unless it was a critical moment. Finally, the cloud shadow frost steps was at most a martial skill that was activated by spiritual energy. It could reduce the pressure, but couldn't truly suppress the enemy. When he broke through the circle of light again, he suddenly thought of the few god inheritances that he had. For example, the extremely fierce Emperor Sparrow body fusion was a double suppression of spiritual and martial strength. Yes, Emperor Sparrow body fusion. At this moment, Yi, who had already escaped, thought of the theory behind the Emperor Sparrow body fusion. The corner of his mouth had already curled into a strange smile. He thought to himself, Emperor Sparrow body fusion. There's no need to use a butcher's knife to kill a chicken. The sky demon elephant is enough. The sky demon ancient scripture wasn't just a cultivation technique. It was also an all-encompassing technique. The first condition to cultivate was that one had to be a soul controller. As someone who had gone through countless soul tempering before successfully cultivating it, Yi's usage of the sky demon elephant had reached a new level after his soul was compatible with Ling Qianqu's. Chapter 1655. In the previous soul fusion, Yi needed to use the heaven origin demon soul to absorb Ling Qianque. Then, with the help of the sky demon image, he could control it in reverse to achieve Ling Qianque's goal and escape from the huge wooden pipe. But this time, the white flood dragon god was a remnant soul. By summoning the remnant soul and borrowing the sky demon image's perverse effects, not only could he use it, but he could also rely on Yi's control over the soul and his high soul quality to fuse the two together. This was the truly terrifying part of the sky demon image. After fusing with the Emperor Sparrow's bloodline, Yi used the sky demon image to temporarily fuse with the white flood dragon god. When the two fused, if one comprehended it properly, they would be able to obtain the remnant soul's power. In the future, there would be no need to summon the remnant soul, and they would be able to use the remnant soul's power directly. At this moment, Yi had become a remnant soul expert of the white flood dragon god. After fusing with the white flood dragon god, Yi discovered that the white flood dragon god actually had 3 outstanding innate abilities. The first was an incomparably powerful soul sound wave attack. He could feel on the way and the terrifying whirlpool. The second was a soul pressure that far surpassed ordinary savage beasts. The white flood dragon god was originally a highly intelligent soul-type savage beast. Naturally, its pressure was peerless. The third was its incomparably fast speed. It was like the wind. The more abundant the soul energy in a place, the freer it would be. It is indeed rare to be able to bring us to the depths of the broken sword sea after so many battles. The white flood dragon god is indeed extraordinary. He muttered in his heart. He was already very satisfied that the great guardian god that had been asleep for so many years could still be so powerful after being summoned by him. Wong. In the time it took for a spark to fly off a flint, the shrinking white flood dragon god's light became extremely dim. The scales that were gradually materializing also fell off at a speed visible to the naked eye. Finally, the white flood dragon god turned into a small shadow in front of Yi and turned into a ball of white light that rushed towards the space between his eyebrows. The peculiar energy was like a spring breeze. Once again, Yi could feel the white light lingering around his pores. A peculiar soul fluctuation was surging in Yi's heart and soul. Yi's body was surrounded by sparkling rays of light. Visible to the naked eye, the fluctuations of light were filled with an ancient aura that could be traced back to ancient times. Rumble! An extremely strong soul pressure suddenly spread out around Yi. His heavenly origin demon, soul, immediately turned red and hot. The constantly rising temperature around him made Yi feel comfortable in the broken sword sea for the first time. The water pressure and soul pressure didn't seem to exist. Yi walked as if he was walking on flat ground, as if he was bathing in the spring breeze. Qing Tian, this young man is very similar to you. After so many years, I hope he can lead me to you. A gentle sigh sounded in Su Yi's ears. The gentle voice echoed in Su Yi's ears. The graceful and elegant voice was like a leisurely chrysanthemum blooming in Su Yi's heart. Su Yi asked softly, "You are the white flood dragon god. Young man, your luck is very good. You actually have such a method. I am willing to hand over my innate ability to you." Following that, a light and lonely voice echoed in Su Yi's ears. "Young man, I hope you can comprehend the profound mysteries of the white flood dragon god race's divine power. I also hope you will not need to use it one day." The white flood dragon god did not reply. It was as if the energy that had been dormant in the Heaven Rider Creek for so many years was about to be used up. It was extremely weak. Profound mysteries? Su Yi immediately became suspicious. Could it be that the white flood dragon god is hiding something that it hasn't passed to him? "What is it? Come back. Buzz." Su Yi was anxious. A white light flashed, and he returned to the real world. In his mind, there was a ball of soul light that was like a sun. The light became more and more dazzling. Suddenly, a dragon's cry came from within his body. The soul light filled Su Yi's heavenly origin demon soul and turned into a small ball of the white flood dragon god's light pattern. Suddenly, everyone noticed Su Yi's strange change. The white flood dragon god's remnant soul phantom had disappeared, and the soul fluctuations around Su Yi's body rippled like divine splendor. A brilliant and dazzling white light radiated from his body. His aura was astonishing, and his soul energy was monstrous. The vast pressure was even more terrifying than the pressure of the Broken Sword Sea. Immediately, everyone within 5,000 meters was shocked. An innate tyrannical and destructive soul energy filled the area. Everyone couldn't help but tremble, wanting to submit. At this moment, only Su Yi could feel that his soul energy was abundant. The information given to him by the White Flood Dragon was also constantly revolving in Su Yi's mind. Within the White Flood Dragon god's power, there were 3 innate abilities that corresponded to 3 soul skills. The White Flood Dragon god's power originally had an extremely terrifying soul pressure. In addition to the 3 soul skills, the sound wave attack, the soul pressure that changed according to the form, and the extreme speed change made Su Yi's eyes light up. He couldn't help but be overjoyed. At this moment, Su Yi was immersed in a state of enlightenment. His eyes were closed, and the soul energy around him was constantly expanding. It gradually turned into a vortex that no one could approach. Behind him, Tian Ho and Li Shiran had been watching Su Yi's constantly changing soul pressure since they fell from the White Flood Dragon god's body. They were shocked. Early 4th rank? How did his soul energy increase so much? Han Yuro's eyes were full of shock. Tian Ho's face was also full of disbelief. Su Yi's sudden violent aura was too strange. He whispered, "Su Yi seems to have fused with the White Flood Dragon god." The White Flood Dragon god was an ancient soul remnant and had an extremely strong soul pressure. Tian Ho, Han Yuro, and the others were a little dazed. They slowly said, "Su Yi's aura seems to be getting stronger and stronger." After that, Su Yi's soul pressure began to spread. The White Flood Dragon god's power combined with the driving heaven art. Immediately, an early 4th rank soul pressure fluctuated in the air. Bang! "Those who stand in my way die." Su Yi's eyes suddenly opened. Between sinking and releasing, there was a burst of light that was breathtaking. The driving Heaven Palace disciples below him were the first to show killing intent. They weren't just trying to stop him, so Su Yi wouldn't be merciful. Immediately, the driving Heaven Palace disciples, standing on top of the iron-armored rhinoceros soul remnant, were terrified. The team that had been smashed into pieces began to sway, and they began to drive the iron-armored rhinoceros to turn back. Oh, the huge iron-armored rhinoceros body was several hundred meters long. For a moment, all the driving Heaven Palace disciples were stuck together, unable to turn back. Did he comprehend something? How did he suddenly reach early 4th rank? The driving Heaven Palace disciples looked at the extremely strange Su Yi, their phantoms shaking. Inexplicably, their hearts trembled for no reason. Looking at Su-yi, who was like a soul god descending, their souls had already begun to submit. Chapter 1656. Many obscure auras began to twist in the air. Su-yi's body was already filled with soul energy. With the help of the white flood dragon's power, it instantly spread out. Su-yi roared in his heart. Illusory Sky White Dragon Classic. This was the name Su-yi gave to the white flood dragon's power. It meant that with the power of the heavens, he could use the white flood dragon's power to change freely. It was unparalleled in the world. Unparalleled Dragon Flash. Activating the white flood dragon's power, the third move speed change was very convenient for Su-yi, who was at the beginning stage of the fourth rank. Whoosh whoosh, a strange light flashed around the heaven origin demon soul. Then, 3 soul doppelgangers broke out of the body with monstrous soul energy. The majestic soul ripples instantly enveloped the entire 5-kilometer radius. It became extremely terrifying. Compared to the usual martial technique doppelgangers, these were more direct and more terrifying soul doppelgangers. The 3 soul doppelgangers and Su-yi's own heaven origin demon soul all had extremely terrifying soul energy. They were not just simple doppelgangers. They were all real existences. Soul doppelgangers. How can Su-yi have soul doppelgangers? Tianwu and Han Yuro's jaws dropped. How did Su-yi do soul doppelgangers that are only at the middle stage of the 5th rank? The Commandant Palace disciple was shocked. Looking at the 4 soul doppelgangers condensing, for Su-yi's silhouettes with flowing hair, he was like a god. His vision turned black. Sister, is this the ultimate level of Cloud Shadow Frost? It doesn't look like it. The soul energy is so strong. Achu was even more incredulous. Legend had it that when the Li family's Cloud Shadow Frost reached the final level, it was a true body doppelganger. It could transform into countless martial artist doppelgangers at the same time and attack the enemy together, creating a sky full of doppelgangers. No, Brother Su is a soul doppelganger. Li Shiran was stunned. The Su-yi in front of her was too unbelievable. Compared to Cloud Shadow treading frost, soul doppelganger was much more difficult. Although there were only 4 of them, this was a mid-tier 5th grade skill. Su-yi's use of it was too shocking. The sudden surge of soul energy and the soul doppelganger, the fourfold Su-yi was simply too strange. Li Shiran didn't know what else couldn't happen to him. 4 Su-yi's soul avatars stood on the ground, facing the enemies of Heavenly Command Palace in 4 different directions. Early stage level 4 Origin Emperor was equivalent to level 1 to level 3 Origin Emperors, but to these mid and high stage level 3 Origin Emperors, it was already a crushing force. The crushing of the soul quickly made the aggressive Heavenly Command Palace disciples piss their pants in terror. Boom! Immediately, the light in Su-yi's eyes flickered. 4 soul shadows instantly rushed out, covering the sky and earth with soul energy. The soul waves were like light ribbons that surrounded the Heavenly Command Palace disciples. The Heavenly Command Palace disciples who already had thoughts of retreating didn't dare to continue fighting, but it was already too late. After violently shaking off the spatial ripples, their souls were instantly locked onto by Su-yi. As if they saw an ancient divine beast, their eyes were filled with fear. In an instant, Su-yi's face sank. His figure moved, and the 4 soul shadows formed hand seals at the same time like flowing light. An extremely dazzling soul energy bombarded the 4 directions. Boom! The 4 surging soul doppelganger fiercely pressed forward. Before they could even make a sound, the soul energy urged by the white flood dragon god's power seemed to have absorbed their souls. All of the Heavenly Command Palace disciples' souls shook. Immediately, their faces turned pale, and they crazily fell down like birds with broken wings. Bang, bang, bang. Rocks were shattered, and the sea water was turbulent. Boundless sand surged, and soon, The heavenly command palace disciples were buried deep in the high ground, unable to be more thoroughly dead. Su Yi's disheveled hair fluttered in the wind, accompanied by Tion's soul energy fluctuations. He was like a domineering soul sovereign looking disdainfully at everyone. At this moment, Su Yi truly felt the terror brought about by the suppression of soul energy. It was a kind of pleasure and satisfaction that came from completely suppressing others. Su Yi's eyes dimmed with disdain as he looked at the withered disciples of Juntian Palace. They were like lifeless flowers, seawater, and dead objects that had lost their luster. What a strong soul suppression! Their souls have already been sucked dry. The heavenly command palace disciples on the high ground on both sides trembled, afraid that Su Yi would notice them. Behind them, those who had personally witnessed Su Yi's might were so shocked that they couldn't speak. A high-tier royal-grade soul skill. Su Yi could be a high-tier soul skill? Is it a heaven-grade soul skill? Tianho was so excited that he couldn't speak coherently. His eyes were full of excitement. Whoosh! In an instant, the soul pressure disappeared like a gust of wind. Immediately, the entire solidified sea began to flow, and the earth-shattering pressure dissipated. Su Yi retracted his hand seals, and the soul energy dissipated. He was extremely satisfied. The first time he used the white flood dragon god's power, it had such an effect. A high-tier royal-grade soul skill? Su Yi didn't know, but after fusing with the white flood dragon god's power, Su Yi had fused the three innate characteristics of the white flood dragon god. It could be said that it was a soul skill that he had created himself. As for whether it was a high-tier royal-grade soul skill, Su Yi didn't know. It turned out that soul skills were the same as martial skills. They were divided into mortal grade, good grade, general grade, commander grade, king grade, royal grade, and heaven grade. Su Yi could only feel that the white flood dragon god wasn't an ordinary vicious beast that had been passed down since ancient times, and the soul skill it comprehended was also a soul skill. Compared to the royal grade martial skills he had, this illusory heaven white dragon god's canon could be compared to his heavenly origin demon scripture. More importantly, the illusory heaven white dragon god's canon seemed to have other effects that he hadn't comprehended yet. Su Yi thought to himself that his soul cultivation wasn't high enough. I don't know. Su Yi chuckled, and then muttered to himself. This was the first time he had comprehended the peerless dragon flash, and he could actually create 4 soul avatars. It was simply too strong. If his soul power increased by another level, the peerless dragon flash would be even more terrifying. The other 2 moves should be stronger than the peerless dragon flash. This time, Su Yi had picked up a treasure, and he was unable to contain his joy. The White Flood Dragon God was talking about the mysteries of the White Flood Dragon God's race. What's that? Su Yi was a little confused. Do you know what characteristics the White Flood Dragon God has? Su Yi asked Tianho. Tianho was well-versed in the Tao of alchemy. After thinking for a while, he said to Su, the White Flood Dragon God is a vicious beast that has been passed down since ancient times. It's rumored that its scales can be used in medicine. It has an extremely strong corrosive effect, but I don't know anything else about it. That's not right, but it's not bad to know that spiritual pressure has a corrosive effect. Su Yi looked up and said, and it seems like I'll have to wait until the right time to find out. This illusory heaven white dragon god's canon is my first official soul skill. Afterwards, Su Yi's fighting spirit and fury continued to rise. He looked down at the endless sea of broken swords and whispered, Zifeng, Junhaoyan, wait for me. Chapter 1657. With that, the disciples on both sides attracted Su Yi's attention. He leisurely flew towards the high ground nearby. Su Yi, what are you doing? The disciples of Drive Heaven's palace trembled, and some of them even dropped the pills in their hands. Their legs went soft, and they fell to the ground. What do you think I'm doing? Was the show good? Su Yi's lips curled into a smile. These Jishin Palace disciples, when their lives were hanging by a thread, didn't care about anything and just watched as he, Tianho, and the others were slaughtered. According to Su Yi's temperament, he absolutely wouldn't let such people go. Su, you forget it. There are still disciples of Drive Palace. You've already killed many of them. Tianwu walked over. He knew that if he didn't stop this, Su Yi would definitely go on a killing spree and dye the sea of swords red with blood. These were all excellent disciples of Drive Palace. If they all died to Su Yi, and not to mention the soul competition, everyone would be unlucky. At that time, it wouldn't be easy to clean up the mess. Su Yi raised his brows and stared at the frightened disciples with disdain. You think you're worthy of being a disciple of Heavenly Palace? Take out all the best alchemy ingredients you have on you. The commanding Heavenly Palace disciple's face turned ashen as he hesitated. Even if he didn't kill, it was still good to collect some interest. Su Yi wasn't someone who would leave no traces behind. A sinister smile appeared on his face. Everyone, protect your senior, brother Tianwu. If anyone dares to cause trouble, and you still dare to sit by, the first ones I'll kill will be you. Boom! Su Yi's murderous intent was apparent. A blue ray shot out from his right hand. The pill cauldron, emitting a blue flame, immediately condensed into ice crystals. It was a terrifying scene. Hiss. Su Yi's frightening aura caused all of the disciples to gasp. They immediately offered all kinds of ingredients and pill cauldrons. Seeing these lackeys, they couldn't help but sigh. Just now, the White Flood Dragon God also mentioned Qing Tian. This Duanmu, Qing Tian, seems to be an incredible mission. When the time comes, I must ask Duanmu Xiaoman about the senior below the cliff. Tianwu, Han Yuro, Li Shiran, Chu, and the others received the items handed over by the Jutian Palace disciples. They couldn't wait to form hand seals. Their hands were constantly changing. Fire, earth, and metal elemental lights spun out and constantly added to the alchemy furnace. Boom, boom, boom. On Tian Ho's side, he had already set up a furnace, lime, and other things. He was looking for the materials needed to refine weapons from his interspatial bag. On the side, Li Shiran took a deep breath and took out a furnace. The purple light instantly illuminated the entire broken sword sea. Chu was shocked and said, "Sister, that's not it. Purple Flame Sun Cauldron." Swish, swish. Hearing Chu's words, all eyes gathered on Li Shiran's hand in an instant. Then, they turned their eyes away, not daring to look anymore. Such a performance made Su Yi nod his head in satisfaction. It seemed that the lesson he gave to the Jutian Palace disciples just now was effective. With Su Yi's demonstration, Li Shiran, Tianwu, and the others could refine alchemy weapons in peace. No one would disturb them. This was the best, and also what Su Yi wanted to see the most. Yes. Chu, Brother Su just gave this to me. Oh, no wonder you and Brother Su were whispering for a long time. Chu laughed. Shiran, don't let me down. I'll leave the 9-turn dragon scale grass to you. Su Yi walked over and said to Li Shiran, the 9-turn dragon scale grass could be refined into a 9-turn spirit refining pill. It had an extremely important auxiliary effect for a half-step Origin Emperor to break through to the Origin Ancestor realm. It also had a chance to evolve into the divine spiritual veins. What kind of magical elixir was this? Li Shiran's thoughts were self-evident. Don't worry, Su Yi, the materials you gave me, whether it's for alchemy or refining medicine, are all top-notch. We'll do our best. Tianwu smiled foolishly. Now, he admired Su Yi from the bottom of his heart. Without Su Yi, they wouldn't have been able to reach this place, and they wouldn't have had any hope of winning the 4 first places. Good. You guys hurry up. I'm going down too. Su Yi's eyes darkened. Then you must be careful. I'm afraid that it'll be unusual if we go down. Okay, you guys take care too. Miss Yuro, you take care too. Su Yi looked around and glanced at Han Yuro. Han Yuro immediately lowered her head. In fact, she really wanted to go with Su Yi. When she raised her head, Su Yi had already activated the Illusory Sky White Dragon Book. His speed was raised to the extreme, and he rushed deeper into the circle with a big stride. Then, Tianwu was ready, and everyone started to refine their items. At this point, The escort work had come to an end. For Su-yi, it was time for the real Imperial Soul Race. The show has officially begun. Looking at Su-yi's back that was already far away, Tian Chang's eyes shone brightly. Han Yuro didn't say the last sentence, as she pursed her lips from time to time. Su-yi's innate charm and the miracles that erupted from time to time made Han Yuro more and more unable to understand this man. Her thoughts about this man also became deeper and deeper. Li Shiran and Ah Chu glanced at Han Yuro and smiled. They began to cultivate intensely. Only the disciples of Imperial Soul Palace were still discussing in low voices. This Su is probably a freak. Even the siege of 20 people can't do anything to him, and he's doing it so easily. I really want to see the battle between him and senior brother Jun Haoyan. It must be extremely shocking. Han Yuro restrained her expression, and her eyes regained their sharpness. Since Su-yi wanted the 9 Revolution God refining pill, Han Yuro was determined to do it for Su-yi. Moreover, she couldn't afford to lose. What are you looking at? Assist us well. Otherwise, we'll take your lives. Ever since he had obtained the White Flood Dragon God strength, the deeper he went in this vast sea of broken swords, the heavier the pressure on his soul was no longer uncomfortable for Su-yi. His breathing was steady, just like he was on land. Su-yi couldn't help being overjoyed. This time he had really picked up a huge treasure. Kid, don't be so arrogant. The White Flood Dragon God is the descendant of a soul-type ancient vicious beast. Therefore, the stronger the soul pressure in the space, the more obvious it is. Su-yi's figure moved like lightning, making his body constantly empty. In a breath's time, he had rushed 100 meters away. What do you mean? What I mean is that in places where the soul pressure is not enough, the White Flood Dragon God's power is not necessarily more useful than an ordinary royal-grade martial skill. Su-yi nodded when he heard this. No matter what, this was his first soul skill, and it would be of great use in this place. Right, the White Flood Dragon God's power seemed to have corroded the souls of those Imperial Soul Palace disciples. That strange light of yours seems to be able to absorb souls for your own use. Why didn't you use it? The Iron Soulfish, who hadn't appeared for a long time, looked at Su-yi. Chapter 1658. Su-yi said as he walked, "Are you talking about the Heaven Origin Demon Soul?" The Heaven Origin Demon Soul was the second level of the Origin Demon Body. It could absorb all kinds of souls, be it human or savage beast, and refine them with the Origin Supreme art to strengthen and temper the soul. No, if it was a group of human souls that I needed to increase my soul energy, I would have absorbed them without hesitation. But if it was a complete soul, it wouldn't feel good to be sucked dry like that. Su-yi said, "Soft-hearted. Demons don't care about that. They've already killed, so why bother? As long as there's evil, they have the right to take everything away. You're helping them." The Iron Soulfish rolled its eyes. "So, you're a demon, and I'm a human." Su-yi's footsteps were like the wind. Soon, he saw the 6-kilometer circle. In fact, Su-yi would never have thought that he would make a completely different choice from today. 10,000 skeletons, all for one person to absorb the souls of the world. The Iron Soulfish looked at Su-yi. It was already used to Su-yi's good luck, so it continued to speak. "Brat, your luck is really good. Even the little White Flood Dragon can pledge allegiance to you. However, compared to the White Flood Dragon clan, our Demon Clan's talent and means are much higher. Moreover, with your perception, after you comprehend it, maybe the legendary god-slaying demon attracting secret technique will be yours." After hearing this, Su-yi was immediately delighted. He said, "I don't need to think about this demon attracting secret art. You mean to say that I should absorb you first?" The Iron Soulfish spat and angrily said, "Absorb me? You want to die from overeating? This sect master has 10,000 years of cultivation." Su-yi immediately smiled and said, "Yeah, I have a 10,000-year-old thing living in my body. What's there to be afraid of?" Boom. After pondering for a bit, Su-yi's soul energy quickly surged. He took a step forward and entered the 6 kilometer to 7 kilometer circle. Sui, it's Sui, Hula. The soul energy vortex that filled the sky smashed into Su Yi's body, and with a wung sound, Su Yi's white flood dragon god strength surged, repelling the soul energy vortex like a tidal wave. His figure flashed like lightning, and with a single leap, Su Yi appeared in another place, followed by another group of people. Monstrous soul energy accompanied by brutal beast phantoms stared at Su Yi. Looking at the dense crowd, Su Yi softly said, "This is really troublesome. There are so many of them. They're all treasures. Aren't you going to take a bite?" The iron soulfish teased Su Yi. Bang! A wave of primordial chi passed through the wide, divine, spiritual veins, and like a whip, it heavily struck the entrance gate. Immediately, an extremely loud and clear cry of pain resounded from Su Yi's body. "Mother of asterisk her, Su Yi trying to me again." Su Yi's lips curled into a smile. "I'll let you see clearly how I clean up the trash." Boom! Primordial chi gathered under his feet, and the peerless dragon flash was activated again. For soul phantoms appeared with the wind, and immediately, a terrifying soul energy surged from all directions. Broken Sword Sea, High Cliff. Duanmu Xiaoman had been the sea for a long time, and the anxious elders were pacing back and forth on the high cliff. The vassal elders and teaching elders were clenching their fists, and their faces were filled with anxiety. Long Pasan was immediately enraged. "You stinking brats, if you dare to walk around in front of me again, I'll break your legs." Chi! The high cliff suddenly quieted down, and the vassal elders whispered, "Elder Long, Big Brother Long, many of our disciples are also down there." Yes, the palace master went down, and there's no news at all. This is not good news. As soon as the words came out, everyone began to complain and wanted to jump down immediately to see what was going on. Here it comes again. I'm so annoyed. Guyue, what do you think we should do? Long Pasan turned to look at Guyue, who was in front of the light screen. Han Wulong was arguing with Guyue, and when he saw the 10 or 20 dots of light surrounding Su Yi again, he angrily whispered, "Which bastard is blocking my daughter and son-in-law?" Son-in-law. Guyue narrowed his eyes and snickered at Han Wulong. No, it's Su Yi, that brat. This 5-kilometer area is where they refine pills, and there are actually people causing trouble here. They must be tired of living. Guyue stroked his beard, and suddenly his eyes lit up, and he said to the light screen, "No, these dots of light are disappearing. So fast, so fast." Han Wulong quickly went up to take a look, and found that Su Yi's dots of light were diving down at an unbelievable speed. "Elder Guyue, isn't the pressure stronger the further down he goes? How can Su Yi be so fast? This brat is really something. I don't find anything strange about him." Haha, that group of disappearing light spots were probably beaten down by Su Brat. "Kill them all. How dare you bully me, Han Wulong?" "Su Yi, well done." Han Wulong laughed and immediately attracted the attention of all the elders. "Han Wulong, what did you just say?" "Say it again." The elders were filled with righteous indignation, and the soul energy in their hands blossomed with dazzling light as they faced Han Wulong. Buzz! Golden dragon shakes the heavens, and a golden dragon mark began to spread from Han Wulong's body. The monstrous pressure of a 6th-level Yuan ancestor realm quickly condensed as he spoke to the crowd. "What? You want to block my daughter, block Su Yi, and block me from above? Come on, fight!" Han Wulong roared, and his voice shook the heavens. The flying beasts in the distance immediately flew away. 5,500 meters, 6,000 meters, 6,000 meters. Luo Wuya asked everyone to stop fighting. He pointed at the light and said, "Su Yi has already reached 6,000 meters. 7,000 meters is a threshold. Everyone stop fighting." When Su Yi reached 6,000 meters, dozens of dots of light once again surrounded him. Han Wulong's killing intent rose again. "Do you still need to say it? There must be something fishy going on below. Otherwise, Why are they always trying to block Su-yi? After being beaten down by Su-yi, they still have a nerve to bare their fangs and brandish their claws here. Shameless old things. At that moment, the group of ordinary elders were embarrassed. However, facts spoke louder than words, and they couldn't defend themselves. Luo Wuya said, "Palace Master is already below. Moreover, the disciples of our elders are also below. Do we also want to kill Su-yi? Everyone, don't panic. The truth will come to light." Hao Yin has already reached 12,000 meters. Gyue looked at the light screen. Can he reach 15,000 meters? All the elders were looking forward to it. Jun Hao Yin, who had taken the lead, actually had such courage and performance. It had exceeded many people's expectations. Chapter 1659. He's much stronger than his master, Zhuqiu Feng. Elder Vassal sighed. If it weren't for those bastards blocking the way, Zhuqiu Feng's disciple wouldn't have been able to gain face. Han Wulong stood up and looked at the light spots on the screen. He instantly fell into deep thought and thought, "It seems that I have to go in and save Su-yi." 6,000 meters. After a fierce battle, all the Yutian Palace disciples have been beaten to the ground. 7,000 meters was a threshold. 7,000 meters was a threshold. So many people couldn't go beyond 7,000 meters. There had to be something there. In the distance, a few Yutian Palace disciples were lying on the ground. Their attire was clearly different from the Archkay Lake disciples. They had a high status and seemed to be at the high third rank. "Are you Su-yi?" asked a pale-faced disciple whose soul had been severely injured. Su-yi looked and asked in a deep voice, "Your elder vassal's disciples?" The disciples nodded and said, "Zifeng has already turned into a demon below 7,000 meters. Su-yi, don't go there. What's going on?" When we first arrived here, Zifeng led a group of Archkay Lake disciples to surround and attack us. He didn't let us go beyond 7,000 meters. According to the Archkay Lake disciples, Zifeng's cultivation has improved greatly recently. He's very demonic. Jun Haoyin took the lead, which made Zifeng very angry. He ordered all the Archkay Lake disciples to block us 7,000 meters away while he chased after Jun Haoyin alone. Just as he finished speaking, several of the Imperial Heavenly Palace disciples fainted. With his soul probing, Su-yi was able to discover that everyone's hearts and souls had already suffered severe injuries. Demon? Where's the demon? Why didn't I see it? The iron soulfish narrowed its eyes. It didn't feel anything wrong from the moment it entered. But the deeper we go, the more obvious the soul pressure and murderous aura in the air vortex are. "Looks like there's a problem. Let's go take a look," said the soul puppet. Whoosh! As the white flood dragon's soul power erupted once more, Su-yi's disheveled hair fluttered in the wind. His entire body's aura had already reached an extremely sensitive state. The deeper they went, the more tranquil and mysterious the sea of broken swords became. Tiny remnant souls floated around, as if it was hell for remnant souls. The energy of the remnant souls here was too shocking. Could it be that something had happened here in the past? For there to be such a strong, baleful aura, there must have been an extremely fierce battle here. Who knows? That Broken Sword Mountain is the best proof, the Iron Soulfish said. At the thought of this, the heavenly origin demon soul within Su-yi's body continued to emit a dazzling light. As far as the eye could see, there was an endless sea of broken swords. At the bottom of the deep sea, Su-yi's eyes darkened. Like a broken sword, he cut across the sky and immediately increased his speed. From afar, he could see the 7-kilometer circle flickering with fluorescent light in front of Su-yi. Outside the circle, there were small circles of light. It was pitch black. After 7 kilometers, there were no more disciples from the Jisen Palace. Su-yi could also unleash the speed of the white flood dragon god to his heart's content. Like a hot knife through butter, he galloped freely in the sea of broken swords. 8 kilometers, 9 kilometers, 10 kilometers. Boom! Su immediately felt that the seawater around him had become extremely heavy. If it wasn't for the white flood dragon god soul's pressure, Su would have already died from his meridians exploding. At 10 kilometers, the surrounding energy gradually turned into a bloody crimson color. Within the pitch-black space, there were scarlet spatial cracks that were at least 1,000 meters long. Looking from afar, the entire 10,000-meter circle was filled with long, blood-red lines, like banners. The spatial vortex also gradually began to spew out huge waves that were as red as blood. No wonder they couldn't come in. The pressure after 7 kilometers is already not something a 4th-level Origin Emperor can withstand, Su Yi thought to himself. Following Su Yi's words, the Iron Soulfish said with a serious expression, "It's been a long time since I've felt such a pure, baleful aura and resentment. It seems that what those brats said makes sense. But it doesn't feel like a demon either." The entire Crimson Sea of Broken Swords was very quiet. Su Yi's body was getting heavier and heavier. He could feel the pressure on his body like steel. Su Yi couldn't imagine how Junhao had reached such a depth. If it was just himself, Su Yi would have a whole new level of respect for Junhao. Could it be some kind of demon? Su Yi frowned. Demon? What kind of demon's blood can spread 10 kilometers? And in such a pressurized sea, even I might not be able to do it. The Iron Soulfish said softly. Su Yi's eyes shone with a mysterious light. He shook the Origin Supreme technique in his hand and secretly activated the art of driving the heavens. At this moment, his body was already surrounded by an imperceptible halo of energy. Su Yi roared, "I don't care if it's a demon or a demon. I'm going to do it today." Charge! Whoosh! The sea water rippled and thunder exploded. 10,000 meters below, the huge sonic boom was like a clap of thunder, exploding the blood-red ocean. Countless terrifying strength chis were pushed to both sides by Su Yi, and the strength chis shattered the space in front of him, causing red ripples to spread out in circles. Su Yi took a big stride forward and took a deep breath. His body was like a sharp sword as he flew down again. After a few breaths, Su Yi could feel that he had broken through to 11,000 meters. He couldn't help but feel puzzled. I've already reached 11,000 meters. Why haven't I seen Zifeng and Junhao yet? There were still floating crimson threads around him. Some plankton that should have existed in the deep sea had also turned crimson. Forget it, let's keep going. With doubts in his mind, Su Yi continued to increase the speed of the white horn to the maximum. After another few hundred meters, Su Yi became more and more frightened. Looking at the continuous expansion of the sea on both sides, there were even cracks that were dozens of meters long in some places like ravines. Many huge corpses of underwater barbaric demon beasts were floating with the seawater. A murderous aura was visible to the naked eye. Su Yi immediately crouched down and spread out his soul sense. In an instant, the entire area of 11,000 meters was covered. "There are traces of a battle here," the soul puppet said. "Yes, these corpses don't seem to be formed by a battle." Su Yi carefully observed the direction of the corpses around him. Circle after circle. The deeper we go, the thicker the blood aura. "Kid, don't you think this is some kind of ceremony or the opening of something?" The soul puppet had also realized the seriousness of the situation. Usually, such thick blood aura could only be preserved in a place as deep as the Broken Sword Sea. If it was any other place, it would have attracted attention. The immeasurable sect or the Heavenly Palace would have sent experts to check it out. How could such a thing happen? Chapter 1660. Phew, if it's not someone playing tricks down there, then there must be something. Su Yi's eyes darkened as he looked up at the Broken Sword Sea that he could no longer see the top of. The blood-red sky shone in all directions. Flickering lights and passing shadows filled the air, and there was a fishy smell everywhere. The whimpering sound of bubbles was also like the dangerous aura of 10,000 ghosts crying at the same time. The originally unclear bottom of the sea was filled with a kind of murderous and scarlet aura, invisibly adding a kind of chilling feeling to people. If there was really something, Duan Shao Man would definitely know. Su Yi's eyebrows tightened even more. White lights surged around his body again, and with a majestic speed, he rapidly descended, like a stream of light sprinting downwards. He flew rapidly towards the circle of light that was gradually turning dark red. Dusk covered the sky, and the entire space was filled with the color of blood. In an instant, a fine silk-like stream of light streaked across the sky, as if breaking through the darkness before dawn. 12,000 meters. Su Yi finally broke through to 12,000 meters. As soon as he arrived at the new circle, the meridians and bones in his body seemed to be filled with blood qi. In front of him, he seemed to see a huge scarlet flower in full bloom. The enchanting branches entwined, and the clouds between heaven and earth were reflected in red. Su Yi, who was not used to it, almost fell down. As he staggered, Su Yi opened his eyes again. He could see a pair of huge blood-red eyes like a dragon's eyes in the air. Upon closer inspection, it was glaring at him with a murderous look. When their eyes met, Su Yi could not help but gasp. What kind of illusion is this? It's so powerful. Su Yi's eyebrows twitched. A huge suppressive force spread out in waves in Su Yi's body. The blood-red power was imposing, as if it was going to devour him into pieces at any time. Standing in the blood-red sky, Su Yi's messy black hair fluttered freely, and a throbbing expression appeared on his determined and mature face. Ugh! Su Yi let out a painful groan that sounded like his soul was about to explode. Brat, calm your mind. The seawater here can already confuse your mind. Activate all of your martial arts. The iron soulfish roared loudly in the entryway. Looking at the surrounding environment that was like a blood pool, Su Yi instantly felt as if he had fallen into a bloody feast. The misty sky and chaotic scene before his eyes made Su Yi feel as if he had fallen into a dream. His whole body floated like a floating plant without a foundation. In an instant, Su Yi, who was in a daze, tried to protect his mind. His expression changed slightly. He could clearly feel that his heavenly origin demon soul was being suppressed to a certain extent. Within his slightly turbid eyes, Su Yi's tiger-like eyes trembled as he straightened his expression. At this moment, Su Yi did not dare to be careless. With a thought, he closed his eyes, and the vital qi in his body surged out from the great void ocean. He allowed his vital qi to circulate as he felt the changes in the laws of space around him. Hiss. The vital qi in his meridians flowed like a great river towards the heavenly origin demon soul wave after wave, ensuring that the heavenly origin demon soul's radiance would not dissipate. He heard the boundless energy in the surrounding space move like a whirlpool. The astonishing sound of bubbles was like the sonorous sound of wind and thunder. Roar, roar. Su Yi, who was being crushed, held on to the last bit of intelligence and soul in his body. His hand seals changed constantly, and the Origin Supreme technique swept out in an instant. The seawater roared and the space trembled. The boundless energy tore the space apart in an instant. Within the blood-colored killing intent that blotted out the sky, everything was deathly still. After half a breath's time, Su Yi began to regain consciousness as he used the art of controlling the heavens, the heavenly Fey ancient scripture, and the Origin Supreme technique at the same time. His body flickered with lightning as he tried his best to expel the blood. Seizing the opportunity, Su Yi gained a sliver of vitality from the suffocating vacuum of blood. He suddenly opened his eyes and shouted, "Come out!" The space was filled with a thick stench of blood. Under the bizarre illusion, vitality was extinguished and the vital energy was dried up. Su Yi's face was slightly pale. His eyes seemed to wither in the vacuum environment, but his eyes had a sneer. Unfortunately, no matter how thick it is, it's still water. Water can't trap me. Suddenly, his palms turned downwards as an icy beam faintly seeped out. He pushed his palms forward with great difficulty. With a slight stomp of his tiger paw, Cloud Shadow, treading frost, instantly shot out a beam of light from his tiger eyes. Two new spatial ripples appeared out of thin air in front of him. Bang! Bang! A loud sonic boom instantly soared into the sky as the sound waves reverberated through the space. The Fuyao Hunter transformation steps condensed under his feet as the wings behind him flapped like the wind. Rumble! Just like that, with one pushing and the other flying, He used both palms to open up a path with Cloud Shadow, treading frost. His feet circulated the 100 steps of Fuyao to the extreme, and combined with the extreme speed of the white flood dragon god, he took a big step forward in a breath's time. Bang! 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 The blood in the solidified space began to flow again as soul energy smoothly spread out. Seizing the opportunity, Su Yi's soul energy enveloped the space within a kilometer. With a loud shout, he rushed out again. Huff! Huff! Su Yi, who was breathing in large mouthfuls of fresh air, finally experienced what it meant to be happy and carefree. With lingering fear in his heart, he said to the iron soulfish, "Old iron soulfish, the blood energy here is too dense. It's even more powerful than the spatial boundaries we experienced before. Yes, it's indeed very strange. We can still make it if we go back now." He sneered. He had already reached this depth, so there was no reason for him to leave just because he wanted to. Looking around, Yi could see that the floating silver wood, weapons, and natural cultivation materials that Merciless West had mentioned had all been reduced to dust. The entire space was devoid of life. It was as if a giant beast had opened its bloody mouth and wanted to swallow everything in an instant, leaving nothing behind, including himself. It's really a pity for these floating silverwood. There are so many treasures underneath. Normally, very few people would be able to reach this depth. What a pity. After a sigh, Yi immediately became spirited. He stepped on his profound handle and quickly left. Let's go. Today, I'll find you whether you're a human or a ghost. There's no reason for me to lose to those two. Yi's will then not admit defeat immediately burned fiercely in his heart. What puzzled Yi was that they had already reached this point. Were those two really that much more powerful than him in terms of soul attainments? Bang! Instantly, an icy light soared into the sky. A blue light instantly rushed out like an ice dragon and created a huge, deep hole in front of him. The blood energy clashed with the blue light. He was getting closer and closer to the light that was 13,000 meters away. Bang! The majestic blue light pillar reached its end. Immediately, fierce thunder resounded from the depths of the sea of blood. The already turbulent space began to tremble once again. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.